I'm going to tell you guys a joke. This one comes from Mr. James Sexton. Mr. Sexton says, someone told me that having big boobs because you're fat is like having a fast car because you're driven off a cliff. Disgusting feminist song, by the way. Disgusting feminist song. Just thought I'd play it for the hell of it. Back to your elevator music. Man, we'll do it. You know, I'd like to do that that Vegas trip if I can, if Rolo's back. Since I'm already flying out to whatever, that would be a good time to do it. By the way, 50 gifted memberships from Arcane. Huge gifts, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Gifting can't be too wild from the most generous audience on the internet. I noticed that the lazy Ibelbot showed up for work finally today. Remember, the topic today is actually Christian nationalism versus secularism. We just framed it this way so that we wouldn't get hit in the algorithm. Where the fuck are these stupid degens? I want to get this debate going. They're taking their time, and it's pissing me off. Holy shit. And Mark Kane with another 50 Crucible memberships. I think we're all getting memberships tonight, boys. And girl. Maybe there's one girl in the audience. You should give your membership up to a member of the Patriarchy. Just so you know. You should do that. You should step out and give your membership up. But I guess if you have to have one, fine. Can we get the entire chat inundated with crowns from Mark Kane? That's 100 Crucible memberships he's donated. The debate hasn't even started yet. Light them up, boys. That lazy Ibelbot has to do some work for once in its lousy existence. As usual, the degens are late. Alex must have pulled himself out of a degenerate late-night stupor at the last minute, probably cleaning out his eyeballs, washing his face off before he puts his mug so close to the camera that you can see which way his nose was broken. FDG gifts 50 Crucible memberships. It's going wild in here, ladies and gentlemen. FDG, that was awful nice of you, buddy. Really appreciate it. Marcane, too. Can we crown these boys up? Let's crown them up. Give me that Crucible gold for these guys, please. Hang on a second. They're setting it up in the background. 1 minute here. Yeah, it's not. I'm not muted. I'm setting it up in the background with these guys. 1 second here, please. Yeah, I'm supposed to be muted, you tards. I'm literally supposed to be muted because we're setting it up in the background. So shut up. Huge super chat from Sexton. Holy shit. $500, man. Thank you. They're still setting it up. They're almost done. Relax. They're almost done.
Andrew versus Jazmen debate is here. We got Jazmen looking ever so lovely, and Andrew looking also extremely lovely with his plaid shirt and dark background. Anyway, so in this debate, we're going to be focusing on different topics. We're going to be debating. I thought you were comfortable with your okay. Andrew looking
We
ugly
can
and
agree
horrendous.
on that.
Andrew looking horrendous as ever. Okay, anyway, so the two topics are what's better for society, Christian nationalism versus secularism, and should one get married and have kids young. So two interesting topics. The format's going to be the same. Both people get to make a 1-2 minute opening statement. I'm not going to be a Nazi about the time, but let's keep it under 3 minutes. After that, it's going to be just open panel discussion, and then there'll be a quick closing statement. Okay, so let's start off with the first topic, which again is, I believe we said Christian nationalism versus secularism, correct?
That's correct.
Yep.
All right, cool. So yeah, that's the first topic. Let's I guess we'll just switch off. So for the first one, I'll have you give your opening statement first, Jasmine, and then we'll switch off. And for the other one, I'll have Andrew go first.
Okay, so yeah, I believe secularism is much better than not Christian nationalism because it contributes to human flourishing and justice a lot
I'm
more.
not muted.
One of the
Shut up.
biggest factors that influences this belief is that I love America and I'm really proud to be an American. My parents immigrated from Iran after the 1979 revolution, where religious law is the law of the land. In that case, it's Sharia law. So I being here and not only being able to experience the freedoms I have, but with going through law school and having the educational attainment that I've had, learning about how this country was founded made me appreciate those privileges even more. We were the first nation to be founded on a separation of church and state, and I think it's one of the reasons this is the greatest country on earth. Our Constitution starts with the words, "We the people," and that is where we get our power and authority. There are no references to God or religion in the Constitution except for the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It's also in Article 6 when it says no religious test shall ever be required to any office or public trust under the United States. The founding fathers set up our country this way because they knew the dangers of not doing it. And secularism is what grants us the freedoms we have: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of privacy, and so forth. It allows us to ground our legal framework in principles that ensure justice, individual rights, and overall well being of society. Instead of focusing on religious dogmatism, we use rational and evidence-based approach to influence policy. And we can just see from the evidence that it works out better. The most secular countries in the world today fare much better on nearly every measure of peace, prosperity, and social well-being, including infant mortality, life expectancy, educational achievement, economic prosperity, freedom, and so forth. We have lower murder rates, violent crime in these countries. Even if you look at states, which I thought this was really interesting, on every measure of social well-being, from poverty rates to STDs to DUIs, the most secular states, or like the least religious, tend to also fare better than more religious states. And yeah.
Cool. All right, Andrew, you are up.
Now, Jasmine, my opening is going to be a bit longer than yours. I hope that you'll humor me as I go through it. If you want to give a bit of a longer response, that's fine. But okay, thank you. I appreciate that. People are always requesting that I talk more about my views of rights, what I think a right is and what I think it isn't, and how this interacts with the world. This debate between worldviews seems like a perfect time to lay this out. The difference between Christian nationalism or Christian futurism, the Christian right in general, and neo-progressives, those being communists, socialists, and even the modern right wing, is this very idea of rights. And you saw Jazmen brought this up. A right from our worldview is just an entitlement, absent duty and virtue. You do nothing for it, you just have it. The great lie, however, is that these entitlements, rights, they can't even exist. You see, when these entitlements get put into practice, we see one side or the other of the political paradigm move to either expand or remove the entitlement. This is based around the different perceptions of duty. So when we apply what is the responsibility or duty of having the right in practice, we can't agree. So we move most often to limit the entitlement because, after all, like most entitlements, they become abused, bastardized, and ultimately subverted from their original intent. This is due to the fact that such entitlements or rights, if you want to call them that, can really only exist in practice if we have a virtuous society that pushes duties assigned to each entitlement so each one is earned or practiced correctly. This applies to all of your so-called rights. Is it virtuous to yell fire in a crowded room with no fire? The answer is no, so we limit that right. Is it virtuous to speak truth to power, on the other hand? Yes, though the extent of that must also be negotiated. Is it virtuous to own a gun? No. Is it virtuous to own a gun to defend your family? Yes. Is it virtuous to own a gun to hurt innocent people? No. So really, what is actually being argued over is the duties and virtues that citizens must have in society and their responsibilities to themselves and others. And the fight over these entitlements ultimately yields nothing good, as they just become eroded by the distinct worldview differences in how to apply responsibilities and duties to them, which is why a right or an entitlement is just ultimately whatever the guy with the power says it is. Jazmen here is going to argue tonight against Christian nationalism from the basis of rights. I called it, and she did, a laughable position for a secularist to take, as what she considers entitlements are just sets of preferences which ultimately don't maximize utility or consequences for the society that she claims to value so much. From her worldview, you have a right to fuck your sister on camera while people masturbate. She thinks you have a right to sleep with a dead body if nobody ever found out about it because it hurts nobody. She thinks prostitution is just swell in society and pornography because you have a fundamental right to do so based on nothing more than her preferences. So I give you this hypothetical experiment, which maps on well to reality. Assume I came to the Christian worldview of ethics absent the belief in God. I believe everything they believe in regard to morals, but just don't accept that God is real. Jazmen, on the other hand, says the entirety of all human morality is adjudicated by her preferences, no different than I do in this hypothetical scenario. How do we determine who is right? We would have to go by utility or consequences. So I would like Jazmen to explain how a mother of three has less utility to society than an OnlyFans prostitute who has sex on Twitter for money. How does it maximize utility or give good consequences to allow incest? How is it maximum utility to allow necrophilia? And most importantly, how would my Christian nationalist society give bad outcomes by simply outlawing all of these things, all of them? What's more, how does society end up being worse consequentially off under authoritarianism, not allowing these entitlements? Also, why would it be immoral for Christians to be in power under a theocratic moral foundation instead of a secularist foundation of morality? Ultimately, Jazmen will agree with the universal morality of Christianity, but only take exceptions to the fact they won't promote degeneracy, which ultimately is all she wants rights for, degeneracy. She won't take issue for our morality on murder, charity, chastity, decency, virtue, duty, none of it. She'll only be able to make the case that she doesn't want the world I postulate because it doesn't allow for her brand of degeneracy. So with that, I yield my opening time, and I'm happy to get into the debate.
Just for the record, PWF is fully on board with fucking your sister if your sister is hot. Okay, anyway, let's get into the open panel portion. So have at it, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, so I just want to say that I don't think that rights are rights if they just, my point isn't that we should only have rights when they have no harm. Most of the rights that we have some harm associated with it, but that freedom, and our country is founded on freedom, and it instead of religious dogma is what outweighs that.
Yeah,
So
who
for
cares?
instance, freedom of speech.
Who cares what the country's founded on?
No, no,
We're
no.
talking. We're
What I'm
having
saying
a
is
we're
freedom
having
of
an
speech
argument.
still
Just
matters,
wait a
even though
second.
people
Hang on.
can say mean
I
things,
want to
right?
know.
You like your freedom to gun. Well, you said I could have a while to respond. You just went on
Oh
this
yeah, yeah,
wild
that's
thing, and
fair.
then
Go ahead.
with
That's fair.
10 seconds you. And then you also say, like, so for instance, I assume you really like your right to own guns. Well, guns also harm people. Now, I believe in your right to the Second Amendment, and I believe that you having that right outweighs that your whatever harm that guns bring about, at least when it comes to generally the ownership of guns. I think Andrew's main thing is that he believes that because he believes in an objective morality, which even that, the only reason you believe that your God is better than other gods is only because of your subjective beliefs. At the end of the day, your morality is pretty much just as subjective as mine. The only reason someone would choose one religious morality over another is they feel that they has a better moral framework for objective truth. If you think Christianity has a better moral framework than Islam, you need a moral basis on which to judge that. And
Hang
it
on,
can't be the
Jazmen.
religion itself.
Wait, let's let
I
her
just want to
dismiss
I
real
just
quick,
want to
'cause
correct this so that she understands. I've granted this worldview is true. I'm assuming that I came to the Christian ethics that I have under a secularist purview, meaning that I'm not saying that it's based on a God or anything else. I'm agreeing with you. I came to it completely subjectively. Why am I wrong and you're right?
So, but the framework you want to hold up is Christian. You want
Yes,
it
but
to
I
be
came
you want
to
our
it.
country to be a
Right. So
theocracy.
that's why I need to explain this to you, right? Assume that I came to the same exact worldview that I hold right now, just absent God through secularism. So I reject your notion of rights and I reject your notion of entitlements. I reject your notion of everything. Okay. But I'm not basing anything on God. I'm basing it purely off of a subjective standard for the purpose of this thought experiment, meaning I came to all of these views through a secular ethos. Why am I wrong and you're right?
I would say you're wrong and I'm right, because at least in this country, your worldview wants to alter our history, our values, our national identity. I just gave you some reasons that secular countries tend to fare off worse than countries that are run by a religious doctrine as the law of the land. And I think
Jasmine, don't you
America,
mean?
one of the reasons.
I think you're trying to say better, right? Not worse. Secular
Yeah,
countries.
yeah, yeah.
Better.
Sorry if I misspoke, but I would say that, like, if you don't like America, if you don't like the freedoms that we have
Then
here,
get
that's
out,
okay. I
right?
just do.
Then get
Huh?
out. If you don't like it, then
I mean,
get out.
honestly, yeah, I'm really proud to live here. So if you're basically saying that America's freedoms that they grant us are bad, and I'm saying when I look at the world and I look at what freedoms other people don't have, like the countries my parents came from, while we have those rights here, I look at this as a good, and I'm happy to live
Yeah.
here.
So
If you
let's
prefer to
back
live
up.
there, I think that's
So
true.
hang on, let's back up because you're not actually
Mhm.
responding to this. I'm gonna tell it to you again. I'm assuming for a second in this hypothetical that I have come to the worldview that I hold absent a God, meaning it's just purely secular in nature. Okay. And I hold all the
Mhm.
same values I do, but I don't base any of them on some murderousness sky daddy, as you would put it, right? Why would those values be wrong and your values would be right if we're both subjectivists?
I mean, I'm not saying that your views are objectively wrong and mine are
Then
objectively
if
right.
my views
I'm
are not objectively wrong, then me advocating for Christian nationalism and completely repealing everything in the United States to make it format around Christian values under a secular purview would be fine.
So yeah, if you want to sit here on the internet and argue with a porn star about a revolution that you want to have on the internet, go for it. Good luck.
So
right?
you're
Our
conceding.
Constitution has lasted this long for a
So
reason.
you're
I just
conceding.
gave you. I'm saying that you don't have an objective morality and I don't have an objective.
You're right.
morality.
So
we're on the
if
same
so
page.
so if it's true that we're just both coming at this from two different subjective worldviews, and you claim that mine is just as valid as yours, what is your argument for why it is that I should not impose my version of this on society and should instead yield to yours?
I'm not saying you shouldn't. You can advocate for it. That's what freedom of speech is. You can sit on the internet, you can have your channel, you can advocate for it. But our Constitution and our branches of government are this way, and they've been this way for a while. Now, there's little differences. Supreme Court may interpret the First Amendment in different ways. But if you want to get rid of the First Amendment, if you want to get rid of our entire country, America as it is, you have the right to try to sit there and convince people to do that.
Yeah, and
Go
you
for
don't
it.
think
I don't
that,
have a problem
but
with
here's
that.
the
I just
crux.
think it
Here's
would
the
be
crux.
a bad idea. And
So
the
you say
reason
I don't
think it
have
would be
a
bad
problem with
idea-
that. You're saying it's not immoral to do, so you have no objection to people doing it.
I have no objection to people trying to, I think just like our founding fathers decided to make this country based off reason, debate, winning in the marketplace of ideas. I do think that's the way to do that. So if you want to have a revolution with guns and overthrow people, I don't think that's good, but I can't sit here and stop you from trying to do it unless you're doing something, illegal, and then, the powers
So
that be
then,
will,
so then you have no moral objection to it. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And if we
okay,
did
do you
end
have
up,
okay,
hang
well,
on,
then
hang
let
on,
me
stop.
reverse
Let me finish. So since you have no moral objection to this, since you have no argument against this, since you don't think that it's wrong for Christian nationalists to advocate for this, since you don't think it's wrong for us to go ahead and reform the entire nation or whatever purview that we want, what in the world is your argument to keep the status quo then?
Because I just told you, when you look at secular countries in the world today, one, I love America. I think our freedoms are great, and that's based on my subjective worldview, but so is yours. You just admitted. So if yours is subjective and mine is subjective, but mine is also the status quo, and it seems to have better outcomes on every measure you can. When we look at other countries who are not secular, on infant mortality, life expectancy, educational achievement, economic prosperity, freedom, when we're looking at murder rates, crime rates, the American model has worked. And so if you want to come in, you're the burden of proof is on you. You're the one that wants to get rid of the status quo. You want to get rid of our freedoms. So you have to explain to me why yours also subjective worldview.
There can't be a burden of proof placed on me to prove something which you've already declared is not immoral and not problematic from your purview. What burden of proof should I bring to the table? You've already said this. You've already said this, but if we're going to go, so I'm going to kind of go ahead into your worldview a little bit more just to humor you, because you're saying, okay, I guess the one objection that I could find is that you think that the outcomes are worse. This is kind of what you're saying.
One objection, yes.
Okay.
And also I believe your subjective moral framework, obviously, it doesn't align with my also subjective moral framework. So ours are both subjective. If you want to start claiming yours is objective, we can get into that.
Okay, so let's go. We can go off of the consequences here.
But you're the one that wants to eliminate our entire history, our national identity, get rid of America as it is.
There's no problem with it from your perspective.
Argument as to why.
Because you have no objection.
Your argument as to why is
you have no objection.
I don't have an objective moral framework.
No, you have no objection. You said I have no objection to this. So there is no argument to it.
I have an objection. I don't think that I have a objective moral objection. That's what I'm saying.
I think what she's saying.
So let's start.
Wait, just let me really quickly clarify. I think what she's saying, she has an objection from an outcomes-based perspective.
Right. So I'll grant that too. I'll grant the outcomes just to kind of further it. I just want to let you know that
also an objection based on my
personal preferences.
Framework.
Right.
I also have an objection there.
Yeah, I get it. It's your preferences, this type of thing. I just want to let you know that the debate was already over before we began because you have no moral reason, to claim. You have no moral. Absolutely not one. Yeah, but that's my point. That's my point. My point is to say, if I have
it's a draw.
No. Stop. I'm going to explain.
Tell me how you.
I'm going to explain.
If neither of us have
you have to stop talking for long enough for me to explain it.
You got to answer the question.
Because if
we're on the same footing,
I'm going to tell you why. Because if we stalemate the board and you say your worldview is just as valid as my worldview is, and that means that you can't have any objection to my advocation for any of the things that I advocate for. Period. Even if what I'm advocating for is a theocracy. That's why. Now, that aside, I'm still willing to grant the worldview for the sake of argument. For the consequences, let's start with this. Who is Leonid Radvinsky? Do you know who that is?
I don't know who that is, but I want to go back because I'm not.
Hang on. I want to let you know that Leonid. No? You want to move back to this and do a circle again? Okay, we can.
No, we're not done. You can't just move on when I haven't had a chance to respond to you. If you would like to move on, I'll just go back to this and you can, which is going to make the debate longer than it has to be.
Go ahead.
You are literally what is a walking incorrect LSAT question, except it's too incorrect and too easy. It would be a layup LSAT question that nobody going to a first-year law school would even get wrong, which is like, oh, you can't prove your subjective moral framework is right. Therefore, I automatically win. And the question would be, what's wrong with Andrew's argument? It's wrong because just because I can't prove my moral framework but you also can't prove yours, doesn't mean yours is right. At best, it means it's a draw. So tell me how you win under that metric.
I'm going to tell you why. Because if I come to the exact same ethical system and foundations that I have right now, right this second, those ethical frame systems say to eradicate and eliminate all of your ethical framework. It says to me to do everything that I can possibly do to destroy the degeneracy that you propose for society by any means necessary, essentially. And because you have no objection to doing that, you can't actually object to me doing that. Do you understand?
No, because I don't have a philosophical objection that's grounded in objective morality. That doesn't mean that I don't have any objection at all. And you still didn't answer the question. If yours is subjective and mine is subjective, how did you win the debate about Christian nationalism being better than secularism?
Well,
how did you meet that?
Well, so what we're looking at here, we're trying to look at the framework and say, if we're going to look for society, okay, and what are going to be the goals and kind of the outcomes for society that we want, we have to kind of start with what our foundation is going to be. So as we started, you said that the foundation that I have is just as valid as the foundation that you have. Under the purview,
philosophically,
yes, but now, hang on.
You don't have a better
if you will stop,
framework.
I'll explain the rest of it. The flip side to the coin now is I can say this, but because I'm a theist and I do believe in objective morality, right? Even though I granted your worldview for the sake of argument, I have a divine command to destroy everything that you would consider that you hold dear, right? And you, though, have no objection to that.
I would argue yours is also subjective. You picked that moral framework because you felt that it was better. That's also just your subjective opinion, right? And then if you want to get into, we can get super philosophical into Hume's. Can you get an ought from an is? Why should it, we could go into a whole God debate if you like. But my point is, just because you get yours from a monster in the sky and you chose subjectively based on your feelings, just like I base my moral preferences on your feelings, it was your feeling that chose your sect of Christianity when your interpretation of divine command, which by the way does not even match most of the other people in your religion. I got a bunch of messages from Christians late after our last discussion about you saying you would institute breeding facilities based on divine command to force people to have children. They were like, I don't know what kind of Christianity that is. That's not my divine command.
You mean within the purview, highly
subjective.
You mean within the purview of a hypothetical?
Because it depends on every single person's interpretation of the divine command, and it's just ultimately based on your feelings as well. And you can't even prove it.
We can grant all of this. Listen, we can still grant all of this and still move into the worldview, and even under your secular worldview of just outcomes based, right? You just are looking at outcomes. I can still demonstrate that the society that I want has better outcomes than the society you want, thus forcing you to concede to my worldview as well. So let's go through it.
Let's get there. No. Let's get there, but I'm not letting you go on this point because you said the debate is over just because I have a subjective worldview.
Well, you don't know it yet, but you're going to find out.
You're
You're about to find out.
Yours is subjective too. So tell me how that makes you win the debate, because that was your claim, and I'm going to push you on this claim until you give me an answer.
Well, I've already given it to you 15 times because once we have had you concede that every form of morality is essentially the same and as valid as any other form of morality, and you have no objection to any of it, then if I come in and say, well, I feel like I have a divine command to destroy everything that you hold dear, you have no moral objection to that, and have to consider stop. I just listened to all your spiel. Stop talking. It's my turn. Stop talking. So it's my turn. I'm answering it. I literally I could not be answering it more concisely than this. So now I can say to you, and am saying to you, that under what I consider divine command, if I come in and say, under divine command, I have to destroy everything that you hold dear, you actually have no moral objection to me doing that. Do you understand?
And your moral objection is based on nothing, your subjective preferences as well. So that would mean it's a draw. So if you believe in divine command,
you keep saying mine is subjective.
This person says there's no evidence for your divine command, and your divine command is also highly subjective. And then you go, well, since you can't prove yours because you don't get your advice from the same sky friend I get it from, now you lose. You still have the burden of proof.
So then that would mean
your moral framework is right.
Right. So then that would mean
the only way you can beat me.
So
is
then
if
that
your
would mean what?
Right. So
what's the logical entailment? The logical entailment would then be, if that's the case, then all we're really talking about again is force, right?
and all the force is on my side. So cool, then I
Well,
win.
this is interesting. Let's move into this, right? So if
Well,
if
I
that's
would
if
just
that's a
like to say one more
determination,
time.
you can say whatever you want. Doesn't matter. You're just kind of talking. You're not saying anything.
No, because you made a claim and I'm pushing you on the logic of the claim and the
Yeah.
burden of proof, right?
Yeah.
Because just because I can't prove my moral framework, which I concede, the only difference between you and me is I'm conceding that mine's subjective and you're not.
Yeah, but I already
But yours is
granted
still
that for the sake of.
you want to
I
argue it's
literally
not
granted it for
subjective,
the
you have
sake
to
of
prove it.
argument. I granted it for the sake of
But then
argument.
you granted it for the sake of argument. Then you said that actually you win, and you win on a basis where you didn't grant it for the sake of
Right,
argument.
because what you're saying is this, is that, well, because if I flip the coin and say, okay, then all I have to do is demonstrate from there that I believe in divine command and objective morality. Now I have a claim of which I can destroy your claim with, because yours is just
But
everything.
you have to
Stop
use other-
stop
you have to
talking,
use
Jasmine.
something.
Stop talking. Let me finish. So again, what ends up happening is this. Once it's flipped, now you can see that all claims that you make are just as subjective as all other claims, and you believe that all of them are just as valid. The distinction is you could be one of these types of atheists who believes that all claims are not equally moral and that all claims are not equally valid. But you, in your stupidity, actually made the bold claim that they're all equal to all other claims. So if that's true, then
So-
any fucking thing that I want to do, you can't have an objection to. Doesn't matter what it is.
That's not how logic works. And
It
if
is
we're
how
gonna go
logic
at the
works.
philosophical sophistication that you're at, then I will take the Sam Harris well-being view. The only
Okay.
reason I don't take that is because there are still philosophical
Problems.
philosophical premises that
Yeah.
aren't met. But where you're arguing from, especially when you say that because I have a quote unquote objective world, but you didn't grant it, and the debate is already over somehow because yours is subjective and mine is also subjective, at least for the sake of argument. But now that the argument's over, mine's actually not subjective, and I'm telling you that yours is. You now have to prove
Because
you have the burden of proof
because you've
on
you've
showing
already
why
validated
yours
that my
is
worldview.
objective
You've
and
already
mine is
validated
subjective.
my worldview is just as good as yours. That's why.
I didn't. What I'm saying is, you said it's not though. You have the burden of proof.
What do
So
you mean?
even
I'm
if I
not
said
saying
that,
I
let's say
already
it's a
granted
draw.
it.
Let's
I already
say it's a
granted it.
draw.
I already granted
Let's
it,
say
and
we
you
say
say it's just
you
as
did.
valid.
You granted it just to take it back.
So
to
then,
make
if
an
it's
argument
just
that
as
this was-
valid, so then if it's just as valid as your worldview, what's your
So,
objection
okay,
to
if
it?
I'm saying it's a draw then, because if our moral, you're saying it's not a draw because it's just as valid. That's not how burden of proof works. This is like logical reasoning.
I just want you
100.
to concede that it's just as valid as your worldview.
If you concede that either your subjective framework is, you have a subjective framework too, or you prove that yours is somehow objective, then you have to concede
So
as well
for the
that we're at the
point,
same level.
so for the
You're
point,
not
so
at a
for the
point above
yeah,
me.
so for the point of the argument, I've already done that. For the point of the argument, I've
But
just
then you
said
took it
I'll
back
go
to say
ahead.
that I lost.
I'll go ahead and grant it, right, for the sake of the argument. But now I just
Then
need
don't
you
take
to
it back.
now I just need you to say that both of our worldviews are equal to each other in your mind.
I don't believe in an objective moral framework. I believe yours is subjective and mine is subjective, and you wanted to grant that, but then say you won by not granting it. And if you're going to do that, then you have to prove why yours is objective. If we're starting,
I didn't say anything about objective morality. One more time.
At the basis of
Why are you not
philosophical
understanding
moral
this?
framework.
Stop. Why are you not
not?
understanding this? If I've
That
already
is exactly
granted,
how I feel
I've
about you.
already granted it. I came to the ethical purview that I have all by myself, sees. Okay, has nothing to
So then you
do.
concede
Stop,
that that doesn't
Jasmine.
mean
Let me
you won
finish,
the debate.
Jasmine. Stop talking.
Okay.
Okay, so if I came to this all by my lonesome, absent a murderousness God, okay, and you claim that these are equally valid, I just need the concession that you believe that the Christian nationalist worldview is just as valid as your worldview. That's it. That's all I'm asking for.
If you concede that you did not already win the debate, then how
Okay,
would you win the debate?
whatever concession yet you want, I'll go ahead and
Like,
make that.
that's
But you will concede that mine is
my-
just as good as yours, right?
Andrew, just
No,
for
I don't concede that
clarification,
it's
do you
just
mean?
as-
Well, let me actually clarify, Andrew. When you say that, do you mean just morally, or do you mean from a utilitarian
Yeah.
perspective too?
What do you mean? From a moral standpoint, there's nothing immoral about what I'm trying to do. From her
Okay,
purview.
okay.
There's
I think-
nothing objectively immoral, I would say, because
Well,
it's really
okay.
hard to ground
So then let's
your
move
moral
into
mind.
what the subjective immorality is.
Okay, sure.
So what
think
would be
we
the
can
what would
see
be
real
what would
quick.
be subjectively immoral about what I'm proposing?
Well, if we're going based on my moral preferences, I think that a lot of outside of the fact that there's no evidence for it, a lot of the policies you purport to believe in, such as in our last discussion, instituting breeding facilities. If 80% of women, you said that if 80% of women were dying during childbirth, that you still believe that they should be forced to have children in breeding facilities if necessary. I believe that that is based on my moral preferences, which based on your moral preferences that you pretend come from divine command, even though most other believers don't even think that that's what divine command would say. I would say that that's bad for society. I would say that sacrificing 80% of our women so that we can have babies for whatever reason, so that the future generations can flourish, is bad based on my subjective moral preferences. I also think when you look at the data and you look at the difference between outcomes in secular countries versus our country, that is also, in my subjective opinion, shows that it's worse, but also objective measures of outcome also show that it's worse. Lastly, I would say that our freedoms, as I love America and I love the freedoms that we have, that could be a subjective opinion. If you want to take those freedoms away, I don't think you're just going to have issues from me. I think you're going to have issues from a lot of people, because if you want to destroy America, which is basically what you're saying you want to do, you want to destroy the foundation of it, you want to take away what our founding fathers have built, you want to take away our Constitution essentially to institute your subjective worldview. I need you to make an argument for why that should be the case, especially when you have no enforcement. And if you think rights come from enforcement, at the moment, you have nothing. All you have is words and a degenerate porn star that you're arguing with on the internet.
Yeah. So, okay, can I move into these points now? Is that okay, or are you gonna like kind of overwindedly say nothing again? So first and foremost,
no, I wasn't saying nothing.
As we move into the hypothetical, you say that from your subjective worldview of your own personal preferences, that I'm wrong.
Just like from your subjective worldview of your preferences,
okay,
I'm wrong.
before you do an internal critique, answer my question, please.
No, yes. So we're at a draw. That's
okay. The so the answer, the answer would be yes or no. So are you saying that I'm wrong, that I would put 80% of women rather than have the entire population of the world go extinct?
Yes, but not in an objective moral way. And you don't have one.
Okay.
Either.
So are you ever? I just need you to answer the question. That's it. I don't need you to give me. I don't need you to give me additional bloviating. Just would appreciate if you would just say yes or no, and I'll do the same thing for you.
Re-ask the question.
So
please.
So just answer yes or no, please. So you're saying, and I want to make sure I get this correct, that from your subjective preferences inside of a hypothetical where it's either the world is going to go extinct or I have to force women to have children, that me forcing them to have children rather than allow the human race to go extinct, that's immoral. That's wrong.
Yes.
Okay, so all of humanity operate off of the subjective preferences of Jazmen Jafar?
No, just like they shouldn't operate.
So who should they operate off of?
I think that's why we have checks and balances. We have a system that we've created with representation. We have 3 branches of government.
So the majority?
We have a constitution that has made this one of the greatest countries on earth. That is a secular constitution that takes freedoms and takes God completely out of it. Our founding fathers did for a reason.
What are we appealing to for whose morality we're going to use, Jazmen?
Well, you're wanting to change the status
quo. Who are we appealing to, Jazmen, for our morality? Jazmen, answer my question, Jazmen.
Who are you appealing to?
Let's just say I'm appealing to myself for the purpose of the conversation. Okay. I'll just say I'm appealing to myself. Who are you appealing to yourself?
I'm appealing to myself, our institutions, and the best minds in the world having reasoned, debated the scientific method, empirical evidence. That's who I'm that's who I'm appealing to. Now I want you to tell me who you're appealing to.
Well, I've already again, right? I'm still inside of your worldview. Happily, I'll just say appealing to me. So if I'm appealing to me and you're appealing to you, who the fuck do we go with?
Me, because I have all the enforcement, which you love, and I have all the institutions on my side. So if you want to change the status quo, you have a lot more work than I do. When I'm saying, hey, I love the foundation of our country, it's good. So I would love for you to give some arguments as to why you want to destroy America.
Well, you don't understand. I'm actually giving you the arguments. You don't even know I am. So ultimately, what you're saying, what it boils down to is might makes right in your worldview.
No, I was appealing to your worldview. I'm saying that what wins in the marketplace of ideas, now, sometimes that's not what I agree with. Sometimes I disagree with the decisions the Supreme Court makes. Sometimes I make those disagreements, but we have a social contract when we live in this country, and I don't think you're violating it by advocating for your position. Now, if you want to take guns and start shooting people, I don't think that's you.
This does not answer to the question at all. If you have a subjective
What's-
set of stated preferences and appeal to yourself for what is moral, and I do the same and appeal to myself for what is moral, what is the threshold breaker for how we are going to make the determination of what we're going to do, Jazmen?
I think then at that point, because we're too random, we're two single individuals, then we look at the framework we already exist in and the foundation of the country we already existed. And the foundation of the country we already exist in, America, which
So
a
then
lot
what
of
if the
people are proud
foundation of the
this
country is
for
that
this.
we march people up on top of a pyramid and we cut their heart out and we sacrifice it to the sun god, Jazmen?
That is, subjectively, I would think that's wrong. Now, one of the reasons, like I
How
said in
would
my
you know
opening,
that
I'm
that
proud
was
to live
wrong?
in
You
this
said that's the
country.
threshold breaker. The threshold breaker is to look at your institutions and to look at your society, and that's
No,
the
I said
threshold breaker for
threshold
what's
breaker
moral.
For this debate, the threshold breaker for this debate.
For this
threshold breaker
debate.
For moral framework.
For the purpose of this debate, you said the threshold breaker.
There is, if we're going, no, I would, because the debate is which one's better for society. So I was taking it by that question. If we're just going to go which one's right morally, then it's a draw.
No,
There
I'm
is no right.
asking
There's
you.
no right
I'm
for
asking
either.
you this question again. One more time, since you just avoid it like the plague.
I
If
feel like I've answered it.
you're claiming, you make the claim, hey, all of my morals come from my own subjective preferences and nothing else, and so do yours. And I say, okay, I'll grant that and agree with it. We have an argument about what we should do with society. How do we make the determination as to which ones we go with, Jazmen?
Okay, well then, like I said, then I think we should go to outcomes. And I just demonstrated, I have a huge paper here, I can send it to you, on all of the outcomes that are better in a secular nation over a nation that isn't secular. The second thing I say we would do is we would look at the people and what they want. In our country, in the United States of America,
so
we
hang on,
value the
I just need to
Constitution.
clarify a couple things. So if we're going to go with outcomes, right? Outcomes are what we're going to move to in order to determine.
That's not the only thing.
What is the other thing?
Trying to give you others. I said outcomes, and we also need to look at what the people, like what the marketplace of ideas. That's why we have freedom of speech in this, because then it allows someone like you who wants to topple America to tell me why you want to topple something that's so valuable to the vast majority of people in this country.
Yeah, but that would be
I would like to
outcomes
hear your
again.
arguments
That would
as to
be
what.
outcomes
What?
again.
If it's outcomes again, then it's outcomes again. But there's also,
So if it's just outcomes, so outcomes are what we're looking at,
it's
right?
not just outcomes.
Then why would you
because
value it? Then why would you value
the
it?
people in this country, most of them share the same subjective preference that I have about the importance of the freedoms that we share, and they love America for those freedoms. So you also have that hurdle to go after. You may be able to go to a different country and say, hey, look at these outcomes.
You think
I may be
most
able
of the
to go to
people inside
American
of the
people.
United States
I may
have a
be able to
subjective
go into the-
morality?
I think most of the people in the United States have a subjective morality, because I think everyone has a subjective morality. And I think that their preferences align with the fact that we have certain freedoms, and those freedoms actually, in some cases, can overpower outcomes, like in the gun example. While
Jazmen.
guns definitely have negative outcomes, I think most people in America would say that we still want to keep this freedom because our moral subjective preference is that it is, but that is the majority.
Well, then that
of
would be
people,
a
not
better
most of
outcome.
them.
I want to really.
Well,
quickly
hang on. We're getting
Wait,
somewhere.
hold
We're
on.
getting somewhere. We're
I
getting
know.
somewhere.
I'm just gonna literally ask one question. I just want to clarify.
You're fucking
this.
up the flow, man. Let me just finish the question.
Well, fortunately, it's my chance. I can do whatever the fuck I want. So, Jazmen, I just want to clarify your second point. So you're basically saying that in addition to outcomes, the other metric that we
Saved
look
by the
at
fucking moderator.
is, the
Saved by the
popularity of people's
moderator.
preferences, right?
Yes.
Okay.
In a
yeah.
democratic
joke.
society, that's why we have a democracy, and I think a democracy is good. So yes.
Right as
Okay,
we start
gotcha.
getting
Okay,
into it.
keep going, Andrew.
Okay, so anyway, all of these preferences that you're pointing to are outcomes. So if you say like, hey, society has determined that even though maybe there's like some negative outcomes, they gain more from owning guns than they don't gain from owning guns, that would still be an outcome. That would be a determination
Sure,
of
but-
outcome. So everything that you're really
way,
after
but
is
it's a
the
different kind of
determination of outcome. So it's all outcomes based. So why didn't you start with the moral objection of outcomes? That would have been far better for you to do. So
Well,
if it's just
I was taking critique of you started.
Yeah,
it with
so
the
if
moral
it's
thing.
just-
I actually, in my opener, you went through this whole thing about rights and subjectivism.
Yeah.
That's why I went there. My opener actually was about the foundation, about freedom, and about outcomes, and then you switched the
so if
debate
it's
over
just
to here. Now
if it's
you
just
can go about it.
outcomes, if it's just outcomes based, then we'll move into the outcomes base of this from your purview. So now we understand at least what it is that you value. You really just value outcomes. So if that's
I
true,
value outcomes and democracy.
yeah, okay,
yes.
got
But
it.
I
That
think
because you
the
think it leads to
outcome
the better
influence
outcome. Because you think it leads to the better outcome. That's why. So you're a
democracy leads to a
utilitarian.
better outcome. So yeah, you can
Yeah.
take everything back down to that, just like you can take everything back down to preferences and like completely eliminate even free will with this. So I
Well,
don't
it's
know what
not
you're trying to do
preference
here,
because
how
it's not
philosophically
really because
sophisticated
it's
you
not
are.
preference based. If you actually are valuing outcomes, it's not really just preference based because you think outcomes are what we should be valuing, not Jazmen Jafar's personal preferences, right?
But also the moral preferences of the majority of the people in a democratically free
Because you think that
democratically free
leads to better
society.
outcome, Jasmine.
Yes, and everything
Okay,
I
well
do
then it's
also has
outcomes.
to
It's
do
all
with
just
leading to better outcomes.
evaluation of
My moral
outcomes.
subjective framework also, but I want to
It's
make sure
all
just
just
to note for the
outcomes.
audience that outcomes can also mean, because like the example I gave, having guns in this country may lead to worse objective outcomes in the amount of deaths, etc. But I think, and this part you're right, that the outcome of keeping it matches the moral preference and matches the viewpoints of most people in our democracy. And so therefore that outweighs that negative outcome, which is also a different way of looking at
Okay,
outcomes. So, yeah.
great. Okay, so now that we've got this established, finally understand what your actual moral framework is, I'm going to ask you this question again, if you don't mind. Do you know who Leonid Radvinsky is?
No.
Okay, he is the founder, he's the owner of OnlyFans, okay? That's who he is. And he made over $300 million last year, okay? He managed to pay himself $1 million a day in 2022 via dividends, right? In this particular case, would you consider yourself to be a prostitute and him your pimp?
If we want to really get down to it, sure. I keep 80%, he keeps 20%. Would you consider Patreon or YouTube? Like if Patreon's taking 20% or if Substack's taking 20% of your income, are they your pimp and you're a prostitute?
Well, no,
except for mine
because
is
there's no
selling sex?
prostitution. So,
Because it's not sex? If you
yeah,
want to say
sex
that
is
just because mine
prostitution.
is sex
That's correct.
and Patreon isn't, then sure. Yeah.
Okay, so right, so you're a prostitute, this is your pimp. Can you tell me why that's a better outcome for a person, better utility for a person than being a mother of 3 in a loving home?
I never said it's better, but I would say that it's better to live in a society that grants people freedoms. We have certain civil liberties, and one of those is the determination in what kind of occupation we want to have and what's best suited for us. So for me,
And
I
all
enjoy
rights
this. I
and
make a
all
ton of money
rights
doing this.
are all of these rights that you are alluding to. All of them have limitations which are placed on them in lieu of responsibility and duty. Correct?
What do you mean?
Well, for an example, if you look at the Second Amendment, right, the fight over the Second Amendment is what responsibility people have with gun ownership. Correct? Same
Sure.
fight over
And I
the
think
First
we have a
Amendment, right?
responsibility. Yeah, we also have,
Mhm.
so in that case, yeah, we have a responsibility with OnlyFans to make sure we don't have like children doing what I'm doing, and there should be certain regulations. I do pay my taxes. I'm a 1099 employee for the IRS. So yeah, I do think regulations are good.
So if the outcomes here, which you're looking at, if you want to make the claim that the outcome is good for a woman, right, you should be maximizing the outcomes, correct? So how can you explain how it maximizes utility? The outcomes are better for society. From my worldview, to say no more prostitution, I want to see more women at home with their children raising their families versus being prostitutes on the internet. Can you tell me why it is that your worldview maximizes the outcomes and mine doesn't?
So I can tell you many reasons, one of which is, again, just making the civil liberties argument that a society is better overall when people are allowed the freedoms to live lives that are conducive to their own happiness. But also, if you look at even countries that criminalize this versus countries that don't, even when it comes to in-person prostitution, decrim versus criminalizing, the outcomes tend to be actually better, like in New Zealand for decriminalizing sex work. So we can even get into that if you like.
Great. So in 2012, a study was published by Harvard Law Education, which investigated the effect of legalized prostitution on human trafficking inflows into high-income countries, which we would consider this to be. The research, as it goes through, shows something remarkable. such as the criminalization of prostitution in Sweden resulted in the shrinking of the prostitution market and the decline of human trafficking inflows. Cross-country comparisons of Sweden with Denmark, where prostitution is decriminalized, and Germany expanded legalization of prostitution, and are consistent with the quantitative analysis showing that trafficking inflows decreased with criminalization and increased with legalization. That's a terrible fucking outcome. Isn't it, Jasmine? That's a terrible outcome.
First of all, I have studies where I can pull up too that counter that, especially when we look at decrim versus the Nordic model. This is like
then
my
show them
area.
to me.
Like I know this.
Then show them to me.
Okay, for sure. And then also, in the meantime, there's Sesta Fosta. So Sesta Fosta was passed in 2017 or 18 by Trump in order to curb trafficking, human trafficking, taking down back pages by making, basically cutting down the protections afforded by Section 230 of the Communications Act, which would make platforms liable for facilitating prostitution, which took down things like Backpage, which made our job, online sex workers, a lot harder. And look up the effects of that. All it did was make human trafficking
Well, I don't need to look
worse.
them up. You can just send it to me. But try to understand the entailment here is that at least you're going to have to concede that there's some human trafficking, which is an entailment of prostitution in general. But there is no entailment of human trafficking from being a stay-at-home mom who takes care of her children. Why would that not be? Why would that not be the outcome that since I want to see that outcome in society and not prostitution? It seems like I have a much better moral leg to stand on than you do from your own worldview.
No, because one, I'll pull up the stats now. We can go through them because I'm going to talk about Sesta Fosta and those effects, and we'll talk about the difference, the decrim, which is why all of the major human rights organizations, all of them, when they looked at all this data, they also are pro-decrim. So even though you may find one study here or there, that doesn't negate all the other studies that there is. And two, I would say that even like consensual sex work is different than human trafficking.
They did a quantitative they did a quantitative analysis.
Okay,
they took a ton of different studies in order to make these types of comparisons. That's one, but two, the entailment here is that let's just say even if there was less human trafficking by the legalization of the prostitution than the decriminalization of the prostitution. If I want zero prostitution and there's no entailment of any trafficking by me doing that, how's that not a better outcome for society, Jasmine?
Wait, well, can you repeat your question?
Yes. If there's an entailment of human trafficking, regardless of the criminalization, decriminalized or criminalized, and I want to eliminate it altogether. So regardless of the criminalization or decriminalization, it's just gone, right? We eliminate prostitution altogether. The entailment there is, and we move towards the outcome of having women stay at home and raise their kids. Why isn't that better for society? Why?
It's because you're taking away people's freedoms, the freedom of people like me.
The freedom to be a degenerate. The freedom of you to be a degenerate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all you care about. All you care about is the freedom to be a degenerate. You don't want expanded freedoms and rights so that people can help anybody.
I care about your freedom to own a gun.
No, you don't. You don't give a shit about that. You don't care about my freedom to own a gun. You care about one thing.
I wrote one of my papers in law school about how I actually think that the Second Amendment is really important, and I would stand up for your right to have a gun. So how is every single freedom?
What about, well, Jasmine, if you'd stand up for my right to have a gun, do you stand up for my right to have a gun with no background check?
No.
No. So then shut up. You don't care about my right to own a gun. All you care about, all you care about is the limitation. No. What you care about, is the duties. Nope. What you care about is the duties which are entailed with the ownership of the gun, not the right to own it. The duty and the responsibility is what you care about. Right. Okay. So if that's true, but what we're quibbling about is not whether or not I have a right to own a gun, because you think I don't. You think I have a responsibility when I have a gun, and you'll give me one if I adhere to those responsibilities. That's what you're actually saying.
No, I think you have a right to the freedom of speech, but that has limits. Just like you have the right to own a gun, but there are limits. So I like our free speech doctrine right now. Again, I know you didn't go to law school.
What you're actually attacking.
There are certain things that aren't covered by that right. The First Amendment does not cover direct incitements of violence. It doesn't cover even obscenity.
So in my opening statement, I laid this out, Jasmine. In the opening statement, I laid this out. It's not really a right
my
then. What it is an associative of duties and responsibilities that we're arguing about, which means that there is
The
no
reason
real.
we're
They got
arguing about
stop,
duties and
Jazmen. There
responsibilities
is no
because we have a
right.
right.
There is no right. If there was a right,
So,
if there was a right, how could you take it away from somebody when they go to
what is the
prison?
function
Can
of the
prisoners
what is
have
the
a gun?
function of our
Can
Constitution?
prisoners
You
have a
need-
All right,
gun?
we need to go one at a time. One at a time. One at a time.
Okay, so
what
let me
is the
ask you.
function
Let
of
me
the
ask you. Can
Constitution?
prisoners have a gun?
I think it would depend, and it depends on the state. And
No,
not
prisoners.
but I meant
Why
no.
can't they have a gun?
because that's one of the regulations and the
Because
restrictions
they-
we place on the Second Amendment.
Because there's no
But
actual
on
right
your
if you
Second
can take it
Amendment
away.
Right to have a gun.
So it's an
Doesn't mean
entitlement.
it's right.
So
A right
so
doesn't
it's an
mean-
entitlement that
Wait.
you can take away, right?
I have a question. If a right has limitations on it, does that make it not a right? Are the only rights
Yes.
ones that have no limitations
Yeah.
on
So
them?
I would argue
disagree with
that what a right
vehemently.
what a right is actually is
And so
just
would our Supreme Court.
what a right is actually is an entitlement, and that the entitlement is subject to duties and responsibilities. It's not actually a right, and most of the rights
are
in the
agreed upon by humans and enforced by society.
rights are
Okay.
entitlements which people have that you claim that people have, but you can take them away whenever you choose to. It's not really a right.
It's not
So-
whenever you choose to, Andrew, because if
It
was
is when
whenever
you
we
choose
chose
to.
you wouldn't be sitting on the internet fighting with me. You would be living the life you want. You have no way right now to stop.
Unless
me. You
there's a
can't take away my
lockdown.
rights
Unless there's
to
a
make millions of
lockdown.
dollars on OnlyFans.
Yes, you
How are you
can.
gonna stop me?
The president could literally come out and take away your rights tomorrow via an executive order and declare martial law and suspend all rights.
Yeah. good luck
Yeah,
with that. There's a
but he
reason that
can.
hasn't happened this
But
whole
he can.
time.
No, it has.
But you-
It has happened. There has been martial law in the United States. What are you talking about?
Okay, so you're saying that basically I don't have a right now, and you can be the person that can judge that, because you saying that if we go through this basically a revolution, because if that happened, especially in recent history over something like OnlyFans, I think you're very deluded on likelihoods of things happening.
Did you have a right to do pornography before it became the law that you could do pornography?
I think I had the right to do pornography before before a law came that prohibited me from doing pornography.
And
so
what-
how laws and
and
rights
so
work
that-
is you have them
So-
until there's something
So then
that
it's
tells
so
you that
then
you can't.
don't cite the Supreme Court and things like this then as an affirmation for why you're correct that you have such a right when you were not allowed to do porn just 50 years ago. Wasn't even legal for you to have the type of society
internet
where you
50
could
years
have
ago.
where you could have that kind of pornography. Well, not even nudie magazines, things like that. There's heavy restrictions on all of it. There was times in American history where it was completely outlawed.
know what the
Stop.
obscenity
Let me
doctrine
finish.
actually
Let me
is?
finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. So again,
not true.
there have been doctrines where pornography was completely eradicated from American society. So I don't know what are you saying, though? What I want you to say, one way or the other, is you believe that a woman doing pornography is a basic human right absent law.
Our obscenity doctrine always had a reference to the community standard, which is why when pornography became a thing and people started doing it on the internet, even if simple places were oh, you can't do it in the city. I've went through the whole obscenity doctrine. You can't have a billboard across a movie theater where people are driving because of whatever reason. At the end of the day, based on community standards, which is why the internet, because if you're going to places to find porn, it would fit that community standard, so it wouldn't be a violation.
That
And the
has
reason I
nothing to
brought
do
up
with
the
what I'm
Supreme Court
talking
in
about.
the first place. No, because I'm responding to you. Can't just say this whole thing, ask a question, and when I'm responding to the things before the
Yeah, but I'd
questions,
like you
you're
to answer
it's
to
irrelevant.
the
It's not
actual
irrelevant.
question.
It's relevant to what you just said in the last.
Well, how is it
5
relevant?
seconds, you told me, why did you bring up the Supreme Court? I'm telling you, because you said rights are only rights if they have no restrictions. And my whole point is we have rights in our Constitution that are then interpreted. Now, you're right. That interpretation could change. That interpretation could change tomorrow.
Yeah, but
I'm
did
not
you have a
disagreeing with
right
that, but
before they interpreted it as a right is my question.
yes, until something usually is outlawed, you have a right.
Okay, so you think that
You have to be breaking
well,
a law.
when it
in
was
order-
outlawed, do you still think that you had a basic human right to do pornography even when it was outlawed to do pornography?
I would say with my moral subjective preference, yes, but I didn't have a right in this country to
And
do
what
pornography.
made it a right to do that?
My subjective moral framework
Because
is
you
that as
wanted
long
it.
as-
Right? Because you wanted it.
Because just like I don't want you to have guns at all, but I still believe in that principle. My principle is
that you
people
want.
should have the freedom to purchase and sell sex between two consenting adults. That is the principle that I always had, even before I did porn. This was, if you asked me 5 years ago when I was just in law school, I would have said the same thing. Okay,
So
it's not
so
because
so
it's
then pornography is a basic human right by your estimation.
being able to sell and purchase sex, I think should be.
Okay,
Yeah.
but this conflicts with your outcomes-based society and duty unless you can
No, it
construct.
doesn't.
Then tell me how it is that the outcomes for this world that you postulate, where you can be a prostitute whenever you so choose, and you can essentially devalue yourself in every way possible, which leads to non-reproductive ends most of the time, by the way. How could it possibly be that that society's outcomes are going to be better than the one that I advocate for, where this is outlawed, and instead we focus on the family unit? How is my society worse?
So let me ask you this. If we just go research for research right now, if you put up your research and I send you research, are you okay then with going with whichever outcome or whichever research is more heavily swayed in one direction? Because it seems like you are.
Yeah, what
Is that okay
I
with
don't
you?
even understand. Can you answer this question?
What's the question?
Okay, so just listen to me, okay? And I'll give you plenty of time to respond. We could actually have a productive conversation, but listen to what listen to what I'm actually saying to you. The entailment, no matter what, of prostitution is going to lead to worse outcomes. No matter what. It's going to lead no matter what, it's going to lead to at least some kind of human.
And what's your evidence for that?
Because it's no matter where you have prostitution, you have human trafficking. No matter where it's legal.
Even in places where prostitution is illegal, though, you have human trafficking.
Okay, but the distinction is that you think that it's a human right to do this, and I do not. So I would move towards a world where no prostitution even happened anymore. That would be the ultimate. Stop. That would be the ultimate goal of my world. Would be to get rid of it altogether, whereas the ultimate goal of your world would not be. So if the ultimate goal that I had, which was achieved, was that there was no more prostitution, how would that be a worse world than the one I postulate, which is there is no prostitution and moms, we focus on families and moms?
Your world. So then if you're going to go with ideal world and make it completely unrealistic, because actually the countries that ban it have a lot of both prostitution and trafficking. But if we're just going to go with ideals, and I can make up my own ideal and say consensual sex work is okay, but human trafficking doesn't exist in my ideal worldview. What kind of fucking hypothetical is this? We can just make up
it can't.
We can just make up worlds.
It actually can't. So under your worldview, if there's an entailment, there is an entailment that if prostitution is a human right, which is what you've got done saying it is. This is a human right. It's a right for everybody to do this, sex work, right? You consider this to be a fundamental right, even absent law. So we can't even work towards a world where you could outlaw this, even knowing the human trafficking component and the bad outcomes to it, because you consider it a basic human right. The distinction is I don't. My world then becomes possible and yours does not.
No, your world. Okay, I just want to note this for the audience. Andrew thinks you can absolutely, in his world, eliminate all prostitution and human trafficking. If we're going to go,
tell me the contradiction.
Like prohibition and all.
Tell me the contradiction.
The war on drugs that worked out.
Tell me the contradiction.
I'm going to create. Huh?
Tell me the logical contradiction. I just told you yours. Tell me mine.
The logical contradiction is that you're saying that your worldview of this hypothetical world where we get rid of prostitution is viable, but my worldview that we get rid of prostitution.
I'm saying that I'm saying mine's possible. Yours isn't, because you believe that prostitution is a human right, so you could never actually move towards a world absent prostitution. And entailment of legal or illegal prostitution is going to be human trafficking. Whereas I say we could move towards a world where you did not have any type of prostitution whatsoever due to the virtues of society. And so this problem's eliminated.
I think we can move towards a world while keeping and decriminalizing consenting adults from prostitution and human trafficking. Your argument hinges on human trafficking and consensual sex work being linked inextricably. That we can't put resources into stopping. It's not, though. It's not. And Sesta Fosta and the outcomes of Sesta Fosta are just one example of, just like we had with the war on drugs, just like prohibition, that sometimes outlawing something doesn't get rid of the problem. So for you you to say that in my, and I like how this is ideal too. So in your ideal worldview, we can get rid of prostitution and there will be no sex trafficking. But in my worldview, where I'm saying in my ideal world, we can keep consensual sex work, but put our resources into stopping non-consensual sex work. That's impossible and isn't even logically sound.
Unless you don't believe, then the only bullet you would have to bite here is to say that you believe that you can enter into some kind of paradigm where sex work, the way that it is right now, is a human right and everybody can practice it, but that you also believe that there'll be no human trafficking associated with it ever.
I don't think that's realistic, nor do I think it's realistic to be able to eliminate it by trying to
so you don't believe, so you do, everywhere. So then you do believe that an entailment of prostitution is going to be human trafficking.
I think human trafficking is an entailment of life. That's the difference between you and me.
It's an entailment of life?
Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to extract.
So we can't even move towards a world without it because it's just an entailment of life.
We can't move towards a view. I said I don't believe it's realistic that the outcome is going to end with zero trafficking. Yeah, but that doesn't mean I don't believe we should move towards that.
But you do believe.
But you do believe.
What's the fallacy? Give me the fallacy. Give me the fallacy.
Yours. Okay, so you're saying.
What's the fallacy? What's the fallacy? Tell me the fallacy, Jazmen.
The fallacy is also the burden of proof.
What's the fallacy, Jazmen?
I just gave it to you.
That's the burden of proof fallacy? Wait, the burden. What's the fallacy?
Yes, it is, because you take yours as just true. You're like, oh yeah, I can work to a world where we just eliminate it all, but you can't. And I'm like, well, what's your reasoning for that? What's the proof? Oh, I can't prove it because you can't prove yours. That's a fallacy.
It's not what I said. What's the fallacy that I stated? What's the fallacy or contradiction?
What?
What's the fallacy or contradiction? There's no contradiction. There's no fallacy.
I just told you.
Name the fallacy.
Everybody look up burden of proof fallacy. He's basically saying he doesn't have to prove why his is right and mine is wrong.
I've already proven it. Because you've already claimed now multiple times that an entailment, even just an entailment of any type of prostitution, is going to lead to at least some kind of human trafficking. Whereas I propose...
And I believe all criminalization is also going to lead to a human trafficking. So the difference between you and me is only that you think that it can be completely eliminated.
So then we must legalize it?
That doesn't mean that you...
So then we have to legalize it?
No, we're not legalizing human trafficking. You need to stop conflating human trafficking.
I didn't say human trafficking. We're legalizing prostitution, right?
Legalizing prostitution, if you don't know the difference between consensual adults engaging in sex work and someone being forced or trafficked, that's on you.
Right, but what the entailment is the entailment that you're saying, though, is that all forms of degeneracy must be legalized and decriminalized because people are going to do them anyway, right? So
no, that's not.
Isn't that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that I'm saying that we have certain rights and liberties, and trafficking is something that happens, but it happens also in places where it's completely not a right. Therefore, maybe trafficking is a separate issue from consensual sex work like OnlyFans. OnlyFans is really hard to traffic someone on OnlyFans. You have to have a bank account that goes in your name. You need to have a consenting. You need to send in your ID. You need to be taxed by the IRS. You need to be confirmed by the IRS. So can you explain to me how something like OnlyFans is contributing to human trafficking when countries that have it banned have just as much human trafficking? I don't understand this argument.
Prove that the countries that have it banned have just as much human trafficking as the countries which do not have it banned. I would like to actually see that. I think
we should go ahead and do that because you've said that a few times and Andrew seems to disagree with that. So if you can pull that up, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I want Andrew to contend with if we're looking at outcomes, why the secular countries tend to have better outcomes.
They don't.
And I can link you that because
let's talk about the fact that women suffer from higher rates of mental illness, and let's talk about the maternal death rates, which leads into topic 2. Hang on, you want me to give you the reasons for the outcomes, right? The outcome distinctions?
Well, give me the reason for it.
Well, okay, I'm trying to, but you have to stop talking. Because as soon as I launched into it, you cut me off immediately. So let's talk about this. Let's get into the fact that the Western nations cannot reproduce their own populations. They can't do it. The birth rates are all on the decline. Every single Western nation cannot reproduce itself and must instead focus on the theist nations to pull in immigrants to replace their own domestic populations. That's one. That's the first
Okay,
argument.
so we're gonna forget the infant mortality, the higher rates of crime, all of those things. And right now, okay, I just pulled up.
I'm just trying to focus on
worst
one at a time here.
Wait, guys, real quick. So this is Jasmine, what you sent me. So where do you want me to go?
So can you open the PDF, or do you guys not have access to it because you don't have an institution? I just want to make sure you can access it.
I don't have an institution. I can see the abstract, but that's about it.
Okay, should I share my screen then, or how does that
That'll
work?
probably be better, yeah, if you have access.
Okay.
This just gives the rough summary, but doesn't actually talk about like why.
Okay. How would
just
so in any case, kind of moving into this as you're looking for,
but also I also
whatever it is you want. Can we start? Can we start with my first point to answer to the question? Stop moving the goalpost. Can we start with the first point, which was that you just asked me? You literally just and we just did. I just gave you an outcome, and I want you to contend with it.
You just ignored. So I gave you like 20 outcomes. You're saying let's ignore all that and focus on your outcomes?
I'm happy. You just told me to give you one, and I did.
No, I'm saying, what is your response to my outcomes? All those outcomes that I listed, I'm about to share my screen so that we can see more of them.
Yeah, okay, but can we start with our negative? So I have a different view. First of all, what is good to you? Is just based around.
Wait. No. We were gonna go into. Do you guys not want to go into outcomes now? It seems like he doesn't want me to share my screen.
I don't care if you share the screen.
Wait, hang on, Andrew. Let's definitely talk about that. But let's first really quickly, because I did ask her to pull up the data that she referenced several times.
Yeah.
So let's let her really quickly pull up that data, and then that will be the next point of discussion, which is what we were saying.
Okay, that's fine, but I'd also like her to contend with mine. So can we do this fair and do it point by point? Yeah. So I'll go after one of hers, she goes after one of mine.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Otherwise, we end up with a mass gish gallop.
Let's let her just show the data that she says she has, and after that, you can get into your point.
Okay, can you guys see my screen? Is it happening?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a study that is done. Let me see if I can. Sorry, I'm really bad with like.
What are their metrics for well-being first?
Well, here are all of the sources, but
what are I just want to know what the metrics are for well-being.
Okay, let's find.
Just hit Control F and go to well-being. Type in well-being and let's see what the metrics are for it.
Graphics. Control F, you said. Okay, wait. Let's go to. I want to start going into criminality and moral conduct. So this would be one of my outcomes for well-being. So although, let's see what it says for criminality and well-being.
So
yeah, okay.
Life satisfaction and well-being.
Okay, all right. This is just about religious people in general. I'm trying to get to the part where it's talking about secular.
Life satisfaction and well-being right there.
Okay. So this is about religiousness, and I think this is individual. I'm trying to get to outcomes. So let's see. We're looking at, maybe it's going into both. Children. Okay, let's see. Let me just read this all.
So here's
but when it comes to more serious, after all, so wait. Yeah, but we find the opposite. Murder rates are actually lower in more secular
nations.
This doesn't
answer to the question for what they consider well-being to be. I need to know what their metrics are for well-being.
Okay, so let's talk about me. So I think higher murder is bad.
I don't care about what your preferences are. You're showing me a study. She said bullshit. You're showing a study. You're showing a study. I want to know what their metrics for well-being are in the study.
This is not about metrics for well-being. This is just about murder rates.
Really? Scroll up. Scroll up. Because it literally says metrics for well-being in the study right at the title. Scroll up. Scroll up.
But that
scroll up.
I just have to go all the way back.
Atheism, down. Secularity, and well-being. So, what are the metrics for well-being?
Okay. I'm talking about well-being. I'm talking about let's look at outcomes. Do you want me to do?
Yeah, but that's irrelevant. Listen, that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant.
Wants to sit here and read 20.
No, it's irrelevant. I just want to know what the metrics for the well-being in the study are.
Whatever the study thinks well-being is, the murder.
Then I need to know what those are.
Wait, stop. Both of you, stop. Okay, let's go one thing at a time. So I think you asked a fair question, Andrew, right? But she was trying to make an argument actually about murder rate.
Yeah, but listen.
Wait, hang on. Because what she's saying is that in her worldview, murder rate directly ties into outcomes.
But how do we know that her subjective metrics?
Hang on.
All right.
What she's trying to argue is that in her worldview, murder rate, which I think is a pretty reasonable position, is tied into how good a society's doing. Mm-hmm. So let's just let her really quickly read that one thing, and then we'll get straight to well-being, which is the next thing that you want to talk about.
But I need to make an objection here, just briefly, and then you can do whatever the hell you want.
Because you don't want to talk about
the objection that I have here is that what you're asking me to do is say whatever this study says based on her whatever she thinks is well-being may not be what the study is actually claiming well-being is.
But this isn't a study. This is a compilation of research. This isn't even, so the top of it, it's like, okay.
Then tell me what they mean by well-being. I need to know that. It's super important.
This has nothing to do. So take this. Whatever the study says about well-being, there's no conclusion here about well-being. Right now, what I'm telling you.
Then how do I know it's well-being? Then how do I know it's well-being?
It's a conclusion about murder rates. So if you're making the argument that murder rates don't associate with well-being, sure. But I'm making the argument, and the audience can decide for themselves. Do lower murder rates contribute to well-being? It doesn't matter what the paper says it does, or you say it does, or I say it does. The stat I'm reading right now is about murder rates alone. Then if you want to say that murder rates don't contribute to well-being, go for it. I'm going to say
Jazmen, Jazmen, I'm going to have to raise this.
Let me read it.
I'm going to have to raise this. I'm going to have to raise this too, which is that murder is an unjustified taking of lives, as you know. So the criteria for what they consider a murder to be, which would probably be under well-being, would be important for me to know as well.
Okay, well, so its murder rates are actually lower and more secular. If you want to say that the religious nations where there's higher murder is all justified murder, go for it. But murder rates are actually lower.
I don't know, because how would I know? I don't know.
The citation is right there. The citation is right there. You could look up the countries and look at why they murder people to come with your conclusion. You're really reaching here. And within America, the states that have the highest murders tend to be highly religious, such as Louisiana and Alabama. But the states with the lowest murder rates tend to be among the least religious in the country, such as Vermont and Oregon.
Yeah, but if this is not
down on every metric.
Okay, well, let's start with the first one then. How do we know that this isn't a correlatory rather than, if it's not a study, how do we know that this isn't just a correlatory?
Oh, it could be, but I'm saying
I don't care.
Secularism is correlated with lower murder rates. I'm okay with that. I'm not saying secularism causes. I'm not saying religious people.
Well, then if it doesn't cause it and there could be a false correlation, then why should I care?
There's an answer to Andrew's question right at the bottom. So, and yet international comparisons. Scroll a little bit down so we can read that. It's at the very bottom. I see it basically. I think that's the answer to the question he was asking earlier.
Where? The bottom of what?
No. Wait, leave it right there. Okay, so it begins at tend to report greater subjective well-being. People who are religious, devout, but not extremists tend to report greater subjective well-being and life satisfaction, more ability to cope with stress and crisis, and fewer symptoms of depression than secular people. However, it should be pointed out that some have vigorously refuted such sweeping conclusions, arguing the link between religiosity and positive health outcomes is grossly exaggerated. Finally, there's certainly the possibility that because of the non-religious of the United States makes one a member of wildly unliked, distrusted, stigmatized minority, they could take a psychological toll on mental health. So this is actually talking about, and scroll up.
Yeah, so that's my point. My point is this paper is looking at the title of all of these sections is going through the evidence. It's not a persuasive essay. So I actually agree. Life satisfaction and psychological well-being. I do think that personally, on an individual level, religious people do tend to report higher levels of life satisfaction, higher levels of happiness. There's other things. Atheists tend to have higher IQs.
Well, that's interesting.
But I'm looking at. That's why I'm looking at criminality. So I'm looking at outcomes for society. We're not talking about.
Are you ever going to let me respond to this or no?
I haven't even gotten through this.
Yeah, but I mean,
you keep talking about random shit.
I'm not talking about random things. If you bring up a paper like this inside of a debate, You don't think that it's legitimate for me to ask you a couple of basic questions so that we can define the context of the paper, one, and then two, to
Let's
make
read it
sure
then.
that we're
Let's
not
go to the top and
looking,
read it.
so that we're not looking at
Scroll down
a,
a little bit more, Jasmine.
and then
Scroll down a
two,
little
so that
bit.
we're
Do you
not
wanna look at
looking,
just the abstract?
and then
Do you wanna look
two,
at the
and then
abstract?
two, and then two, so that we're not looking at a correlatory versus something which has been controlled for, and then three, what the methodology is for them to discover this. Because as we're going through
Okay, well,
this,
you have
stop,
you have
Jasmine,
the-
stop talking, Jasmine. So then what we could do is at the
You're
end,
literally retarded.
as we're going through, how is that retarded? What objection
Because
do you
this
have
is
to that?
looking at murder
Wait, Jasmine.
rates. I didn't say it twice.
Wait, Jasmine. Let's let Andrew finish his point because, to be fair, he hasn't talked in a minute. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so anyway, all of those are fair objections for me to bring up to this. You don't, and you haven't described any of them. I don't even know that you've actually read this paper. I'm not even sure that you have.
read it.
Then why don't you tell me what they consider well-being and their methodologies are? What are they?
That is my point, is that the study, let's go to the abstract. The study is not making a claim.
Well, I thought it wasn't
about
a
that.
study.
It's looking at each individual metric, right?
Well, is it a
So
study?
Let's go. Let's
Is
go.
it a study or isn't it?
Abstract. What do we currently know about
Well, stop.
atheism
Is it a?
secularism?
I just want
In
to
what
get
ways are
clarification. Is it a
atheism-
study?
The abstract is telling you what the paper's there
Yeah,
to do.
but is the
This
paper a
article
study?
offers a thorough presentation and discussion of the latest social scientific research concerning the identities, values, and behavior of people who don't believe in God or are non-religious, and addresses the ways in which atheism and secularity is properly correlated with societal well-being. So you want to know what societal
Okay,
well-being
so
is,
now
right?
hang on. Okay, so here's what I get from this. Go back up, please, to where we just were in the
Well, I'm
abstract.
looking for their definition of well-being.
Hang on, go back.
But
Well,
you asked
I
for
would
that.
probably be under definitions, but go back up.
That's
okay,
where I went.
to the abstract. Let me respond first to the abstract. It says this article offers a thorough presentation and discussion of the latest social scientific research concerning identities, values, and behaviors of people who don't believe in God or are non-religious, and addresses the ways in which atheism and secularity are positively correlated with social well-being. Got it. So this is an opinion piece. It's not an actual study. There's no.
But it's
That's it.
Did you not see? Are you actually mentally ill? Do you not see that it's going based off? So it's not this person's opinion that murder rates are lower in secular
well,
nations.
the problem is
that is because that is the fact.
Nope,
He's giving
it's
you
not
the
a fact.
facts.
What they're doing is they're giving you citations for you to go and you can interpret the data how you see fit from those citations. But this
Okay,
is still
the
just
murder
stop,
rates,
Jasmine. This is
whatever
still
you-
just the overarching
the murder
opinion
rates
of
are
this person.
lower in those countries. There are also other outcomes that I brought up to you about lower infant mortality rates, almost on a lot of different
Wait,
metrics that I
lower-
have in my notes, which we
lower-
can even go through in this paper.
Yeah, let's go through.
We can even go through in this
Okay,
paper.
so-
This paper is linking to studies that have studied this, and it's studied murder rates and compared them. So if you want to refute this, then pull up some evidence that the murder rates are actually that this person, this is just their opinion, even though they're giving you the citations, and it's a published piece that was peer reviewed in a real journal. There are people peer reviewed this, and they don't let just bullshit fly. That they wouldn't be like, oh, actually the murder rates are reversed, but we're just going to let it fly because it's an opinion.
Yeah, is there
This is not an opinion?
So I have a question for you. Is this a meta-analysis or isn't it?
Yes.
It is. Can you show me where it's a meta-analysis?
Oh, I can't even scroll on this. But what do you mean? It depends. What do you mean by meta-analysis? Do you mean that it's looking at the analyses of a lot of other studies?
No. Listen, inside of sociology, there's a huge problem with replication of studies. Okay, it's called the replication crisis. It affects.
Yes, I've heard of it.
Hang on, it affects all forms of science, but sociology is particularly infected by it. So one of the ways that they're able to kind of push back a little bit against the fact that almost 50% of all sociological studies can't be replicated, which means that they probably have terrible results, is by having what's called a meta-analysis done, which is where they take all of the studies inside of that field and then they're analyzed by a whole bunch of scientists in order to figure out what's good or not.
That is
well,
what
then
this is.
show
That's
me
how
where
got
it
published.
says that it's a meta-analysis.
The fact that it's peer reviewed and it has
Peer
all
reviewed
of
doesn't
these-
mean anything.
But when it's looking at so they're looking at the field and all the social research we have on secularism versus atheism.
Yeah, that's not a
Here,
meta-analysis.
all
That
of
doesn't
this
mean it's a
is
meta-analysis.
also- Okay, even if it's not a meta-analysis, can you please tell me how this is wrong? All of this that it used, which all of this comes from other reputable, respectable, real sources, and it's giving you stats
because I'm
about
trying
the
to.
murder
I just
rate.
tried to explain it to you. I'll explain it to you again.
You're refuting this paper. You're refuting the paper based on what?
I'm not.
I want to know.
Well, first
You're
of all,
refuting this paper
before
based on what?
I'm trying to explain it to you. If you are able to concede this point, which you can look it up right now, and I'll give you the time to look it up, that sociology has a huge problem with replication of results, which it does, has a massive problem with it. Then kind of the offset to that is what's called a meta-analysis. Okay, that way we know that the data that we're looking at is okay enough for us to at least examine so that we can understand that we're not coming to false views based on the fact that these people are just credentialized. So is this a meta-analysis or isn't it?
Okay, if it's not a meta-analysis, then are you saying, because this is the thing, there are some stats that are very easy. So sociology, I get what you're saying, but where you're wrong is that certain things in sociology are harder to get. It's harder to get that information than others. The murder rate is not a difficult one to get.
It could be,
Subjective
depending on the
well-being,
criteria of what they
happiness.
consider murder to be. That's why it's important that we know the methodology.
And look it up and refute it then.
Well, how can I? It's your burden.
Say,
it's your burden, not mine. So tell me how they what are the metrics they use for murder?
Okay, let's look at the reference and then let's look at that paper, because this is just referencing a bunch of studies. So let's do it then. Let's go for it. If you want to do this, let's do this. All right,
guys, real quick. I kind of skimmed through this as we were going through it. It seems that on certain points it supports secularism, and other points it supports religion. Like
I thought it was an opinion persuasive piece. I guess not then.
Well, I thought it was a study in a meta-analysis 5 minutes ago.
For example,
I'm going with what you said.
What the fuck?
Okay, let's see it. Let's see.
How insane is this chick? I can't even believe this.
Okay,
so
let's see.
Wait, real quick. So for some things, like for example, murder rate seems to point that, hey, secularism works better. But for other things, like for example, happiness, it seems to say, hey, religion works better.
I agree. But he's saying that the murder rates could be wrong. So he wants to go through. Let's find the study they cited and let's go through.
Well, I mean, if this is your
is
your evidence, we have to first define murder, then we have to look at the metrics for how they're kind of assigning that. And so usually you find that in a controlled study under methodology. So I did see.
So let's see.
By the way, guys, 10
Jensen
minute warning before we move on to the next topic.
So actually this is in a lot of studies. So there's unless these are all from the same, which I don't think there's not. Yeah, no, they're all different years. So there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4 studies that we can go through, and I have time. Let's go through all 4. If you're saying these are all just wrong and this is just an incorrect thing, then let's see Jensen 2006. Let's go down and let's copy and paste it and let's go through it. Let's go through all of them. Why not?
Let's just do 1 or 2.
Okay. So does it still share the screen if I open in another tab, the study?
Most likely, but I'll tell you once you do.
So here we go. Religious cosmologies and homicide rates among nations. How do I copy this? Okay, I'm just going to search it. Jensen 2006. Paper called again. Homicide rate nation. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so yeah, it's not shared, so you have to share the other screen.
Okay.
I'll just remove this one. It'll be easier for you to share the other one.
All right, let me make sure we can open it.
So you're not. So Jazmen, I just want to make sure that I get this clarified. You're not actually familiar with any of the studies that are inside of this paper, nor are you actually familiar with the paper, but you did bring it to debate over. Is that correct?
I am familiar with the paper. That's why I knew when it comes with happiness, I did read the entire paper. Now, I didn't go through and check every source, because when I'm looking at a peer-reviewed paper that's been published and it's giving me
let's find out if you're telling the truth. Let's find out if you're telling the truth. Close your eyes and put your hands up like this. Close your eyes, put your hands up like this. We'll determine if you're telling the truth.
I'm not doing that.
No? Can you can't I don't believe that if you closed your eyes, put your hands up, you could even tell me what one of the sources is. I don't even believe it. I don't think you've read any of these sources, and yet you still brought it to a debate.
There is one of the ones I was going to look at was the one that starts with Let me see it.
You don't know. You don't know any of them. You don't know any of the
I don't remember
sources.
the
You don't know
name
anything.
because
Why did you
I don't
bring this to a
remember the
debate? You
name
haven't even read it.
As a researcher, because I don't remember the name
You
of the
haven't
researcher,
even
but I'm
read
certain
it.
Of every single stat that I have, then none of it's valid. SureCat, this is the one I'm talking about. SureCat is, and there was a bunch of it: 2003, 2006, 2008, 2009.
Yeah, now that you're
All of these
reading it
SureCat, I
verbatim.
remembered it. I said it starts with an S. I didn't remember the term SureCat because I didn't prepare for this for 2,000 hours, but I did read it. I remember being like, okay, SureCat seems like he's done, or the one that starts with S seems like he's done a lot.
So
you
you haven't read these primary. Jazmen,
just because you don't memorize all of the names.
You didn't even understand the context of the paper.
That the paper is not legitimate.
You didn't even understand the context of the paper.
This is as valid of a source
Your
as you can get.
keep screeching.
It's
Free.
other
Free.
Yeah. Okay, you talk louder. Yeah,
Free.
We can do this all day.
All you're doing is reading.
Something-year-old man. It doesn't look as stupid for me to come play this shit online.
You have not. You have not. I mean, you're a prostitute. What do you mean? You can't make any bad claims about what I do online.
You're sitting here of all the things that you could.
You would hump your sister for money. Like, what are you talking about? How could you possibly make any claims against me?
You're sitting here. And you're sitting here of all the things you could be doing, of all the people you could be doing. You're sitting here having a debate.
You requested the debate. I didn't reach out for a debate with you. I didn't reach out for a debate with you.
To be fair, I was actually the one that suggested this debate.
So then on top of that, again, you're diverting. Again, all you're doing here, again and again and again, same thing over and over. You haven't read any of the sources. You're not familiar with the paper. You couldn't tell me the methodologies. You can't tell me anything.
I read all these. I can
No,
tell you right now, I
didn't read any of it.
I read the
You're wasting
paper.
everybody's time.
I knew that, and I know when
all you're doing is wasting our time.
Academic paper. All of the citations are here. I remembered that this guy, SureCat, even though I didn't remember it was actually SureCat.
Screech louder. Keep screeching.
Has a. What do you mean?
All you're doing is reading.
You did not prove your point in the slide.
You brought evidence.
Every single one
you
of these
brought evidence. You brought evidence to a debate you hadn't even read.
Yes, I did read the
You didn't
paper.
read
I
it.
didn't read every source in it. No, that's
then
not
how come you couldn't tell me
How come you
couldn't tell me the methodology?
When you look at the paper that is studied, that has been peer reviewed, that's citing a bunch of stuff, you don't have to go read every single citation in order to be able to logically and on good authority assume that the information is correct. You fucking idiot.
You do if you don't have a meta-analysis, which is available to you to make the determination that what you're reading is true. You brought an opinion apiece. It is when you have 50% of them are wrong.
You're saying all of sociology is bullshit unless the paper says it's a meta-analysis.
I'm saying
the paper is citing to
other
journals.
Jazmen,
and not only have those sources been peer-reviewed and actually published, do you know how much it takes for something to get published? So not only is it looking at what's already been published, it's looking at multiple
screeching at the top of your lungs. Calm down.
It's give you 4 sources.
You have
because
if you have 50. If you have 50,
I can talk over you too.
Yeah, well, you're just reading.
Hang on.
You're just reading.
It was fun for a while. I do want to get back into it.
Yeah. So let me just say, right, so that you understand, if you have a particular area of science which suffers from 50% or more of that discipline being something which is unable to be reproduced, that means that a lot of it is wrong. And the only offshoot for that inside of those sciences, which is why most skilled, competent debaters will bring what's called a meta-analysis, which takes the entirety. Yes, true. It is true. And they'll take the entirety of those studies under a meta-analysis in order to present their point, not individualistic studies.
Meta-analysis?
Which stats?
Were your stats
Which
all
stats?
from meta-analysis?
Which stats? Which ones?
All of the ones you said.
Name one.
The ones about anyone.
You don't have one. You don't have one. You don't have one.
Let's go to my Instagram after this.
You don't have one.
I'm going to go back. Every single stat that Andrew has ever said on any show, it was done. He was founded from a meta-analysis. That's what he's saying. And that's not true. It's not true that something has to be a meta-analysis for it to be true. This paper has been published and reviewed, and it's looking at a multitude of other studies and actually giving you multiple resources, giving you 4 papers that prove that point. But we could just look, are murders higher in secular or non-secular countries? You're saying any response we get from the internet right now is all wrong
I
unless
didn't
it's
say
done
that.
by a meta-analysis?
No, I'm just saying that if you're going to cite sociological studies and you're going to bring sociological studies to a
They don't
debate,
count. They don't
yeah,
count.
well,
unless they're
the burden of proof becomes far more limited if I can just assert that, hey, based on other meta-analysis which have been done on sociology, almost 50% of everything done can't be reproduced. So we probably want to bring in an entirety of a meta-analysis
here
on
we
this.
go. So this is one of the papers. So should I share this, or do you want me to just read it? This is one of the things it cited.
Okay, wait,
and I can read directly from it.
Wait, Jazmen, real quick before we do that. So let's let you read the source that I guess Andrew asked you for when it comes to the gun thing. Let's just do one source and then let's move on. And I do want to get into the next topic. Unless you guys just want to fuck the next topic and just focus on this one.
Well, I prepared for the next one as well. So
okay.
Yeah.
So I'll let you really quickly show that source and then we'll do closing statements. So
do you want here? We can even just look at the abstract. So this is what I'll just read it to you. Although religion has been viewed as in the source for people that are noticing religious cosmologies and homicide rates among nations, a closer look. This was one of the 4 sources that the paper cited that Andrew was throwing out, but this is what it says.
We can't see it. Can you share that screen?
Yeah. Okay, let's see. That present. It's making sure I have to stop and then share again. I think.
Stop and then share. Exactly.
Okay. Okay. So can you guys see it now?
Yep.
Okay. So although religion has been viewed as an important role in the maintenance of moral order, the most recent analysis of variation in homicide rates among nations argues that homicide is facilitated by high levels of religiosity. That's a different source that says this. So this is all building on top of each other. That analysis, however, was based on scatter plots for 18 prosperous nations and focused primarily on the United States compared to secular nations. Because there are numerous dimensions to religiosity and a variety of alternative explanations of homicide rates, a more complex analysis is required before more definitive conclusions can be reached.
That's what I thought. Hang on. Read the last sentence again.
That's what this study is doing. It linked to this study. This study.
Yeah, read the last. Just read the last sentence for me. Just clarifying.
You fucking retarded.
Please read the last sentence
again. I'm not.
You're
the
not
study
going to?
attempts such an analysis for a much larger sample of nations and tests Durkheim's hypothesis that religious passion as a valuable characteristic of nations is a positive correlate of homicide rates. A multiple regression analysis reveals a complex relationship with some dimensions of religiosity, encouraging homicide.
Great.
And other
now,
dimensions.
can I respond to some of what you've read?
No. Because
I'm not allowed
this
to.
was one of the listed 4 studies.
How long does she get to filibuster, Alex?
Let's let Andrew respond to that. To be fair.
So you said this says right here at the top, because there are numerous dimensions to religiosity. That would be methodology, Jazmen, and a variety of alternative explanations of homicide rates. Again, methodology, Jazmen. Hang on, Jazmen. Let me finish, Jazmen. Let me finish, Jazmen. You won't let me finish, Jazmen. Let me finish, Jazmen. Stop talking, Jazmen. You still won't talk. Jazmen. Shh. Hush, Jazmen. Stop talking. Stop reading. Stop reading. Stop reading. Stop reading.
Let's just really quickly let Andrew respond, and then you can.
Yeah, scroll it back up, please, so I can finish my response to what you've already read.
You're not actually arguing anything.
I am arguing.
No one was disputing that. No
okay,
one was
great.
disputing that.
So anyway,
let's just let him say what he wants to say. And
anyway, because there are numerous dimensions to religiosity and a variety of alternative explanations of homicide rates, the more complex analysis is required before more definitive conclusions can be reached. This is all correlatory. You haven't even read the study. You didn't read the original paper that these studies were based off of. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
The original paper. I did read
no idea what you're talking about. It's ridiculous.
Said that those murder rates are higher in religious countries.
Based on what methodology?
And it gave you 4
what methodology? What's the methodology?
Peer-reviewed papers.
What's the methodology?
4 other peer-reviewed papers.
What's the methodology in those papers?
That showcase. This is one of them. You won't let me fucking.
No, that's not methodology. What's the methodology in these papers?
This study. Oh shit. This study. You didn't even let me get to it. Now I can't even.
You can just hit Control F and go to methodology.
I can't, unless you want me to hide the screen and use my real name to sign into the institution so I can access the whole paper, because right now.
Well, you should have read the paper and then you could tell me the methodology.
No,
You shouldn't have read it.
I should have looked at I looked at one paper that's looking at all of the studies in this particular area, giving you multiple references for every single thing that it said. It gave you 4 references for the fact that murder rates are higher in religious areas than secular ones. This is very easy for the audience. If you believe that I'm incorrect and Andrew is correct, please go ahead and find a source that says the opposite, and we can compare and contrast. But as far as I know, this is not disputed in any way. It seems like this is pretty, and by you being like, well, it's not a meta-analysis and there are 4 sources, but you didn't actually read the 4 sources.
That's right, you didn't
actually trust a paper. No, so
you can't, because you don't know what what stats. Name a stat. Name a stat that I named. You can't.
And I don't even remember.
You can't, because you're full of shit. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about.
I've listened to you debate. Are all of them for meta-analyses? You know what? I'm going to have my assistant on this right now. I'm going to be like, go find a stat.
Get your assistant on it. Get your assistant on it.
Give me, what's one stat? Find one stat Andrew has mentioned and check to see if it's done from a meta-analysis.
Well, it would depend on what the stat. It would depend on if the stat was from sociology or not, right?
If this is now your new metric for how we discern facts, is we can't look at papers because they're persuasive pieces and all of the sources in there, none of them are valid. You're saying this one, and this is going through and telling you.
How could you prevent? Jasmine, stop reading for a second.
We can go to another page, and we can.
How do you know that without Jasmine? You're still reading, Jasmine.
Went through 4 other papers that all came to the same place, Andrew. So if you want to completely get rid of this entire field of study, if you want to say this paper is all bullshit,
not saying any of that,
meta-analysis, and all of its sources are bullshit because it's not meta-analysis, and
you're still reading.
Rates somehow aren't higher, and murder rates somehow aren't higher, infant mortality isn't higher, none of these things are higher, then I would love to know.
Okay, so anyway, I'm just going to kind of say this again so that you understand.
If you do that while I'm talking, I'll do it when you're talking.
Yeah, but I mean, I wasn't filibustering. You were.
I think you filibustered a lot of times, and if you want to talk while I'm talking, I will do the same to you.
Yeah, but you don't ever stop talking, so that's the thing.
All right, right? How about we both don't talk over the other person? Let's just.
You're still ringing, by the way. You ring is still ringing.
Hang on. I do want to get to the end of this topic because it's already an hour and a half now. We have a second topic, so why don't we just? I'll let you guys go at it for another minute or two, and then we'll get into closing statements.
Yeah. So anyway, without understanding the methodology, Jasmine, how do you know that you're not coming to bad conclusions?
Because I do know, this is how I typically do my research, is I look for valid, peer-reviewed, published sources. Now, if that source, such as this paper, has looked at, it's a paper that has been peer-reviewed, it's been looked at multiple academics. You do not have the credentials to even go through any of this. I don't know what your education level is, but I don't think that it's at that level.
You do?
And then that, I mean, I'm definitely more educated than you, unless you have a doctorate degree that I don't know about.
You have a doctorate?
I have a Juris Doctor. A Juris Doctor is a doctorate degree.
I didn't know you had a doctorate. I didn't know.
You didn't? You think lawyers? How did I be a lawyer?
Well, I didn't know you were actually a lawyer.
Yeah, I'm actually a lawyer. So so you just didn't believe me. But if you didn't not believe me, and if you took that I was a lawyer, you would know that I have. I didn't make
any accusations. Calm down. I just asked if you had one.
You knew I call myself a lawyer, and so that means I have a doctorate degree, and that's.
Yeah, I mean, you can call yourself whatever you want, right? So, doesn't mean it's true.
I wouldn't call myself something that I don't have, and if I'm calling myself a lawyer, then I'm lying about that. Then I must be lying about the doctorate too. However, because I'm a lawyer, I also have a doctorate degree. So either you can think I'm lying about both or neither. But
I didn't say you're lying about anything. I just asked a clarifying question. Calm down.
Yes,
I don't understand how you would be able to.
I have a Juris Doctor from a first-tier law school that I got into with a full ride after I started.
And did they teach you when you were getting that doctorate? Did they teach you that methodologies inside of studies are very important to notate? Stop, Jasmine. Let me finish my question, Jasmine. Let me finish my question, Jasmine. Let me finish my question, Jasmine.
You interrupted me.
You're still ringing. You're still ringing. I didn't interrupt. You were done talking. I was responding.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You interrupted me. I'm saying that It's a really good way to look
Screech
into,
louder,
if you're trying to
Jasmine.
do research, to look for valid sources. This is a valid source. This
It's so
this
valid. You
book
didn't
and
even read it. You didn't even read it.
Shut up and let me finish.
You didn't even read
Okay?
it.
I did read it. You're just saying I didn't read it. You just saying things doesn't mean
You
I
admitted
didn't.
you didn't read it. You want me to
You
find the
just- I
timestamp?
didn't read the. I read the paper. I didn't read every single.
You didn't
source
read
that
any
the
of
paper
them.
was
You don't even know the
cited. Yes, I
methodologies.
did.
You don't
I
know
read the
anything.
paper.
You
I
just
didn't
made it
read
all up.
All of the sources. It gave you 4 sources. In fact,
You
some
just
of the
made
most
it up.
interesting ones to me. Some of the most interesting ones to me were the ones done by SureCat, and that's why there was 2002, 2003, 2006, 2008, 2009. And I remember seeing the name SureCat. I'm like, oh, when I have time later, let me go into SureCat because this actually is just interesting. But you can typically, and I'm going to say this for everyone, you can typically, when something is peer reviewed and when something is looking at a multitude of sources and it's giving you 4 sources for a stat that says something like murder rates are lower in X countries, you can on good authority say it's true. You're not wrong if you didn't go look at every single study, read every single
what's a
paper,
meta?
and then look at every single methodology.
What's a meta-analysis, Jasmine? What is it?
It gave you 4 sources.
What's a
It gave you 4
meta-analysis?
sources. It gave you 4
So
sources.
what?
It gave
So
you
what?
4
So what?
sources.
What's a
What do you mean?
meta-analysis?
So
What's a
that
meta-analysis?
It is perfectly reasonable. Okay, it is perfectly reasonable to take this article, read that part, and see it as true without going in and looking at the methodology of every single
Jasmine,
study.
are you aware that
people?
Are you aware that people have sent in peer-reviewed studies that are mock studies just to fuck with the system and done it on purpose? They have been. Stop talking, Jasmine. It's my turn, Jasmine.
You need to know.
Yes, Jasmine.
Yes,
Jasmine, you do. But they were all peer-reviewed, Jasmine.
That's why you're looking at
they were all peer-reviewed, Jasmine. They were peer-reviewed, Jasmine.
Which study that was published in an actual journal that went through the peer review process did someone fake? I want to know. Can you send me that?
Yeah, I can send it to you right now. There was a whole sequence.
Send it to me.
Whole sequence of studies.
Guys. I let it go for way longer. We got to move on to the next topic. I'm going to do quick closing thoughts. And then we are going to have to keep the next one a bit quicker since we're already coming up an hour, 40 minutes. Okay, so Jasmine, since I let you open, Andrew, you go first with the closing statement. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this was fun, to say the least. We end up starting with, we have kind of this subjective model and worldview, and under her purview, she can't really actually say that there's anything wrong with anything that I morally postulate as an ought whatsoever. Once we get into the utilitarian side and we test that logic, we kind of find out we're not even really sure that she's a freaking utilitarian. She kind of won't commit to what she considers to be any type of ethical system because basically it all just comes down to Jasmine's personal preferences. When we're trying to get into, though, let's assume you are a utilitarian. I'm trying to assume something, some type of any kind of moral purview. I'm willing to engage with that worldview. So she brings up a sequence of studies that she never read in papers that she clearly never read. She doesn't know the methodology. She doesn't even know what a meta-analysis is. She doesn't know anything about any of this. She doesn't know what's going on with the replication crisis in sociology. On top of all that, people have sent in fake study after fake study. I pulled it up right here. I'll send it to Jasmine. They've sent them in just to test the peer review process. They get peer reviewed and often published, even though they know that the things inside of them are not true. That's why you have to have some type of analysis and you need to be able to go over the methodology. And what she brought instead was a sequence of data to a study she wasn't even familiar with. A bunch of stuff that she even said it's probably just correlatory. It's absolutely insane to me. Okay, I can't even understand why anybody would ever take this woman seriously about anything she ever says again.
Okay, Jasmine.
Okay, my turn. So I would say one on the worldview. Andrew's is also subjective. So I think there we can say it's a draw, although he said in the beginning that he won. He still never explained how he won with that metric. Also, so the only types of studies that are valid are not meta-analyses. And this is just for everyone in the audience. Andrew is not as well educated as I am. So let me just tell you something. When that way to look for information like the murder rates. And if I'm wrong on this, I would love to see any information that I'm wrong on this. I found a study that was published that looked at a multitude of other studies that were also cited. I didn't look at every single citation. Andrew,
she didn't look at anything.
Personally, if the end of this debate is Andrew saying that the statistics are false and the paper is false,
Didn't even
I'm
say
okay
that.
with that, because usually when people start refuting the paper and they start refuting the statistics without telling
Just
you
ask
why
some simple
exactly,
questions.
and they don't have any evidence to the contrary, then I think that's a good place to end the debate. He just thinks that you shouldn't trust papers, and even
Didn't
if it is
say that either.
correlatory, yes, secular nations
Even if
tend
it
to
is
have
correlatory.
lower crime, along with a multitude of other things, which I'm going to briefly go over. That is also from this paper, as well as another paper that I was looking at. I'm going to quickly go over this. So Andrew might think all of this is false, but it's not. And there are multiple sources, multiple papers that this study looked at in order to come to those conclusions.
You almost
And
can't
came to
believe
different
it. It's
conclusions on
real. You
other
know what I
parts, like
mean?
psychological
You
well-being
almost can't
and
believe it's really
life
happening, but it is
But
happening.
most secular countries in the world today are much better on every measure of peace, prosperity, and societal well-being. And these are, he likes what's well-being: infant mortality, life expectancy, educational attainment, economic prosperity, freedom,
Yeah, it is
and levels
entertaining.
of corruption in the country. In fact,
I
those
got her to
countries
lose
with
her
the highest
mind
murder
multiple
rates,
times.
Jamaica,
It's pretty
Honduras,
fun.
Guatemala, Colombia, and Brazil, which somehow Andrew was saying the murders might be justified. I leave that up to you guys.
Well, I mean, she could have just told us
Whereas
the
the
methodology,
lowest
right?
murder rates are in countries even like Singapore, which are highly secular. Even if you look at the states in the United States, the ones that
This
are
is
the most
education
religious
for
have
you.
the highest rates of STDs, poverty, also murder, gun violence, compared to less religious states. So even if we're looking at it from a
You might wonder,
utilitarian
like,
standpoint,
how could
I
this have
would say
happened?
secularism is better. If you want to throw out all the data, you can throw out all the data, but I trust the data, and that's what the data says.
Data doesn't say that. She never demonstrated that.
All right. Anyway, let's move on to the next topic. That was fiery as fuck. We'll keep the next one a little shorter because I do got to make it to Whole Foods as always. So anyway, so the next topic I believe was remind me again. It was about should women start families and give birth at a young age? Correct. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep, that's
cool.
correct.
So
So
for the last one, I let Jasmine kick it off. So for this one, I will let Andrew kick it off for the opening statement.
Yeah, so I have this on my screen right now. We're talking about maternal deaths when it comes to children. If we go back looking at just the 1970s to now, rates increased with maternal age. Rates in 2021 were 20.4 deaths per 100,000 live births for women under the age 25, 31. 3 for those aged 25 to 39, and 138.5 for those aged 40 and over. The rate for women aged 40 and over was 6.8 times higher than the rate for women under 25. Differences in the rate between age groups were statistically significant. The increases in the rates between 2020 and 2021 for each of these age groups were statistically significant. That's very important that you note that down. You can find this. This is just so that Jasmine has this information. If you have mean age of mother, 1970 to 2000. In the year 2000, the average American woman having her first baby was almost 25 years old. In 1970, the average age was 21.4 years for her first birth, according to the new report. So essentially, my argument kind of gathers around this, which is to say that younger women are more fertile and they have much more childbearing years, to the point where it's statistically significant that if you have sex and impregnate an older woman, you increase your likelihood of all sorts of birth defects, including the birth not happening, by a significant margin. So is it better for society for women to have children when they're younger? I think it is. I can't even imagine how Jasmine's going to dispute this, but I can't wait to see.
Okay, Jasmine.
all right. So I would say that pretty much, at least in the United States in 2023, all the information we have indicates that you should wait. It has the best marital outcome. So if we just look at marriage, if you get married at 20, you have a 50% more chance of getting divorced than if you get married at 25. So between the ages of 25 and 32 seem to be the best. And being college educated, going to go get educated, is better to do that before you have children and get married than after. Your rates of likelihood of divorce goes way down. It goes way down if you have a bachelor's degree. If you have my level of education, a doctorate degree, it goes down to half of that. The higher the education, the lower your likelihood of divorce. Also, this group of women is the only group of women where not only the marriage rates are going up and the birth rates are going up as well. Also, also children born to older women have better outcomes. So the more older and more educated you are, the benefits are very vast. We can go through these. These are from Pew Research, US Bureau of Statistics. I don't know if the meta-analysis, I don't know if what he just said was a meta-analysis either, but we can go into that. Sharper children, actually maternal education seems to be one of the biggest factors that contribute to childhood cognitive development and well-being. Higher test scores, sharper cognitive abilities, better outcomes in general. So yeah, I think that the best course of action for women in America is go to school, wait till you're a little older, and then get married. Your kids, it's not about just how many kids you can produce. It's about your kids also thriving and having a good life.
All right, hell yeah. All right, now we're going to open up the open panel portion. Again, I'm going to keep this one a little shorter than the last one. I'm going to take a piss, but you guys have at it.
Yeah, so that really didn't have much to do with the topic. Can we start with the rate for women age 40 and over, 6.8 times higher than the rate for women under 25 to see the death of babies and all sorts of birth defects at a rapid rate? You can find this information from the CDC itself. That'd be cdc.gov. Doesn't it seem like it was healthier for both the children then and for the mother to have children when they're younger?
Yeah, no, to have children when you're older actually has better outcomes for the children. So yeah, I think you do increase your likelihood of having issues with pregnancy, but women who have children over 30, now over 40 is a little different than over 30, like between 30 to 35, I think is kind of the best years to have children. And those children tend to have
between
much better outcomes.
Even up to 31 years old, there's a statistical, if you're looking at this for maternal, when you're talking about these types of deaths, you'll find that it's a statistical significance between these age brackets when it comes to deformities, when it comes to infant mortality, when it comes to almost everything which is risky. So this is not just risky to the child, but it's also risky to the mother.
Okay, so so let's say this. Can you admit, though, that the children who don't get any of those risks and they actually make it, those children, are you disputing the stats that those children actually end up thriving?
Well, before we can...
Do they actually end up thriving?
That would not answer to the question as to whether or not women should have them when they're younger. So there's another multi-pronged...
So
hang on. Let me finish my point, and then I'll let you talk, I promise. Okay, the other prong here, for one thing, I don't think you're going to dispute those facts, but the other prong here is that there's longevity involved, which is that when you're younger and more fertile, you can have more children. That's a true statement, and they're going to be healthier children. So you say that the outcomes for women who are having children later in life are better, but they actually have less children. It is true, maybe they can donate more resources to those children, but don't you think that having more children's better?
I don't think necessarily having more children is better. I think, in fact, if you're just going to have more children and they're all going to be living in poverty, they're not going to be scoring high, they're not going to have sharp cognitive abilities, you're more likely to get divorced because you got married and had those children younger. I think those are all negative outcomes. I think
so. You don't want the black community to have children?
I'm not saying I don't want them to. I'm saying it's worse. I think for
women
in the black community,
you think they shouldn't have them?
My advice still stands. If there's a woman that's 20, she can do whatever she wants. My advice to you, woman in poverty that apparently is black, you should go to school, get college educated. That's going to lower your chances of divorce, and it's going to have better outcomes for your children. Even if that means you can only have 2 children instead of 20, I still think that's better.
Yeah. So your advice, though, to young African-American women would be that the outcomes of your children are going to be much worse than the outcome of poor white children, so you just shouldn't have children. Until you end up in a stable... Well, no. If it's based on the metrics that you laid out, right, then wouldn't you have to give that advice along racial lines?
No.
Why would you not?
You can argue.
Why would you not?
You can... Because none of the metrics I said had to do with race. Now, it's true that black women are more likely to be in poverty, are more likely to maybe even have kids young. I don't think they should.
Right. So then your advice. So then your advice for young white people and young black people, you would say that because young white people are able to get, no, it's not the same, because you would have to concede that young whites, for instance, inside of the United States are more likely to have these better outcomes younger than young black people. So you would tell young black people that it's probably an imperative that they don't have children because the outcomes of the children are going to be necessarily worse than the outcomes for young white children, correct?
That doesn't logically follow.
How does it not?
That being older, being 25 and up, so Black women can choose to have kids 25 and up too, and trying to get a college education is still going to be better. That advice is also for Black women and for white women. Now, if you can't achieve those things, I'm not telling you you shouldn't have children. That's a
Yeah,
completely
but
different claim.
but
The
wait,
question is,
Jasmine, you have a disparity here,
should,
though,
no,
don't
no,
you?
let me finish. The question
Okay.
is, should women wait until they're older in order to have children, or should they do it young?
Yeah.
I'm saying that the data shows that the children born to older women,
Mhm.
especially if those women are educated, tend to do much better, and the women themselves tend to do much
And
better.
if we break
So I would
down,
give that advice
and as I'm
across racial
looking, yeah,
lines.
but as I'm looking at this, do you agree that the uh, later in life, even educated, that Black women's children, even educated, have worse outcomes than white people's children, even educated, when they're older?
If there's, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what the data
Right.
indicates.
So then,
that doesn't mean
using this logical metric that you have of better outcomes, wouldn't you say that it would be better for them then, if they're going to have worse outcomes, to not have the children?
No, I don't think people
No.
that have worse outcomes should not have children. I'm
Right.
saying you should
Well,
do
then you
whatever
have no
can
fucking
in your
argument. Then
power.
you have no
let
argument.
me finish. I'd let you finish your fucking
No
question.
argument.
You're saying, I'm saying that people should do whatever's, this is a should. You should do whatever is in your power to have children. If I was saying that no one who can't guarantee these perfect outcomes should have children, then I would say only people who have as much education as me should have children, and people that like you shouldn't.
Then you have no
That's
argument.
not what I said.
Then you have
I'm
no
saying
argument.
what's best. And these are the things that if we're giving advice to young women, should these women try to have children early or should they wait? And I'm saying that they should wait. And this applies across race. This applies to everyone.
Well, it
Now, if
can't.
you want to have kids early, or your only option is to have kids early, or you can't afford to go to college, I'm not saying you shouldn't have kids. All I'm saying is that if it's an
So
option
then,
for you, that your childhood outcomes will be better.
So then, if the option for the outcome of like college and this and that is not going to actually lead to the better outcome, would you say that the woman should wait until later in life then to have the child, or should she have
You're
it when she's
saying-
younger and fertile?
If you're saying if there were not looking at socioeconomic status or maternal education.
No, that's not
at
what
all.
I
Like,
asked.
if we're just
Your
isolating-
argument was this. You said, if you're not able to achieve a higher education level or something like this based on your circumstances, I'm not saying you shouldn't have children. Okay, so I'm going to grant this and say then, if that's true, to the people who are not able to achieve whatever this higher socioeconomic status is, would you tell them then that they should probably, if they're going to have a child, have it in their more fertile years that has less impact on the health of the child and the health of the mother?
I would say if that's the case, you should still wait till you're at least 25, because at 25,
Well, that's
between
young,
25 and 32. Well, what are we? Because is young 20 or is young 28? I'm 28, because I would say those are different. Is all of your 20s
Well,
still
I mean,
young?
you're still going to
Because
have.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, but what would be kind of your pushback against somebody at 21 or 23
I'm about
having
to
a
tell you
child
that. I'm
versus
about to-
25?
That's what I'm telling you, because your divorce rate goes down by 50% versus 20
Yeah,
and
but
25. That's
okay.
a big thing,
Yeah,
because
but
I'm sure
we're
you're
not talking
not a
about the
big
divorce.
proponent of. Can I finish? You asked me a question.
Yeah,
you
I'm
don't
just
let
saying
me
we're not
answer
talking
it.
about divorces,
So-
though.
But that matters, because if you're having a kid, unless you want to have a kid without a father, I'm assuming that you also are advocating for two parents that are probably married, or their relationship has a higher likelihood of working out. I would say that if you wait until you're at least 25, and the statistics back me up, that when you're 25, your rate of your relationship with the father, I'm presuming, goes up by 50%, that you should
Is that
still
across
wait. There are
all? Is
also
that
other
across all
studies that I
demographic
can
lines?
link
Is that
that
across
don't even
all racial?
necessarily-
Jasmine, is that across all racial demographic lines?
That's the general statistic. Now, if you want to isolate
Well,
just Black
let's
women,
do
then
some
show me a
science.
study that shows-
Well, we would have to do a little
No, show
science and
me-
isolate, right? So this is your
So show me
position.
that stat.
It's your position. I'm asking you.
My position is that the stats overall show, I haven't seen a stat that says Black women who marry under 25 somehow are exempt from this. The stats that I've seen that I can show you, right? This is pretty common. Even Rolo fucking had to concede to this on Fresh and Fit a couple weeks ago, that a woman that gets married at 20 is 50% more likely to get divorced than a woman who gets married at 25. And then after 32, your divorce rate goes up more. But 25 to 32, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31 are all better than 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Now
Okay.
you're saying, well, is this the case for Black women? I presume so. Now,
Well,
if there's any
why
evidence
would
to
you
the contrary, please show me.
Hang on. Why would you presume that?
because the stat is looking at everyone, and I wouldn't know if just this one race of people, all of a sudden the stat doesn't
Well, not
work
just
for them.
them. We would have to isolate it by Hispanics, African Americans. We'd have to isolate it by all types of different demographic groups, right?
The general stat is that's the case. If you get married at 20, you're 50% more likely to get divorced at 25. If you want to isolate it by race, if you're somebody of a particular race and you're like, maybe that doesn't apply to me, then go for it and look it up and see if there's any stats that look at your particular race. Now, we do know that Black women do tend to get divorced more and they actually get married less. So if you're a Black
They also
woman
have
and you
more
want
abortions, right?
if you want to,
And they also have worse outcomes for generally
if you're a
inside of
Black
society
woman,
for their
if you want the
children,
best-
right?
If you're a Black woman and you want the best likelihood of your relationship with the father, let's say you're married and you have a kid, if you want the best likelihood of that relationship lasting, the data that then you see this stat that the best rates for marriage are 25 to 32. I would say that you can assume that applies to you unless you want to look up a different study that says that for Black women that all of a sudden getting married younger is better. I don't know why that would be the case.
Well, because if you're going to actually make this claim, if you're going to make the claim, hey, between X and X, I think that there's better outcomes in general for society, then what we would need to do for women, okay, sure. Then what we would need to do then is we would need to isolate this by group, right? That's science. Science is isolation. So what we would need to do is we would need to isolate across all demographics to see if your utilitarian advice would actually be sound for all of them. So the question becomes, is this true for all demographics, or is this only true and because there's so much of one demographic, this is the general advice you want to give, but it's not actually sound advice?
Well, the premise for the debate was should women. If the premise was should Black women or should Hispanic women or should Native American women, then
They're
I
not
would have
women?
looked more into those
They're not women?
But the premise,
They're women.
The premise of
They
the
are women.
debate was should women. And then I say, well, here's what the stats say about women. And you're like, well, you didn't look for Black women and you didn't look for
because
Asian women.
what
You didn't look
happens
for women
what
with
happens
one
is
leg,
you
and
come
you didn't look for autistic
you come
women,
to
and you didn't look for
because you're coming
you
to
didn't
bad
look for-
conclusions again. This is what I've tried to tell you before,
this is,
right?
No, it's not a bad conclusion, Andrew.
How do you know?
Okay? And if this is actually making me very confident in my argument, because if this is where you're going, this is what the stats show, that getting married after your prefrontal cortex is developed decreases your likelihood of divorce. This is very obvious. You can look this up. U.S. Bureau of Statistics, Pew Research, all of them say the same thing. And you're like, well, we don't know if this is true for Iranian women and Afghani women and blah, blah, blah women. Sure, we can go with that. It may not be true for a specific group of women, but the question of this debate is should women have children young? And this statistic says women tend to get divorced less when they get married.
The counter to this, hang on,
children
Jasmine,
to
I just
come
let
out
you
of
talk.
marriage-
Be good faith back, okay? The rate for women aged 40 and over was 6.8 times higher for infant mortality.
Wait, what does that have to do with what I just
hang on,
said?
and
are we moving on?
No. This is key to the argument as to whether or not women should have children when they're younger or not. Right? So from my
And
metric,
you said that I didn't.
for my
Jasmine, let's let Andrew respond.
Yeah, just try to be good faith for once in your life. You can.
You as well.
Can you address this? Can you actually address this and just tell us that you don't actually care about that? You only care. You don't care that the data here shows that these age groups were statistically significant between them, and that the younger the woman is, the less negative health outcomes she has for herself, and the less chance that her baby has negative health outcomes. Can you just say, I don't care about that. I only care about the born person. And once they're born, I want to see them have okay outcomes.
Well, okay, so one, we have to talk about what's young. I wouldn't say women should wait till they're 40 if they want to have kids. I would say between 25 to 35 are the ages that I'm looking at. And most children, although they may have slightly worse health outcomes than women who have children at 18, and they can have less kids than women who have kids at 18, I never advocated for 40 and over. I think between 25 to 35, and that is still very good ages to have children, and you're not even a high-risk pregnancy until 35, and that in those times, you have more of a likelihood to
you are a high risk, a much higher risk pregnancy in those time periods. So the reason that I know that, I'm showing it on my screen right now. No, I'm showing it right now. There was a statistical distinction Okay, even
Andrew,
How
we
big?
can't
How
see
big?
your Andrew. We can't see
you
your
can look it
screen.
up on cdc.org right now.
Okay, tell me how big was that statistical difference between a woman having a kid at 20 and
They
25?
notated
Tell
it.
me.
They notated it as significant, which means it's more than deviation, which
No,
means
well,
it's
do you
significant.
have the number? Did you read the study? What's the number?
Well,
What's the number? Tell
when
me.
they say significant, right, then they're stating
But I
that
care. I
that
care
this is
how much
not
because
within the realm of
okay,
a
if your
standard
argument here
deviation.
is that women who have kids at 25 are, you can even say it's you can say it's a little bit more likely that your kid will have these negative health outcomes and your
Well, and you'll
pregnancy
also
might be
be
worse.
able
But
to
the
have less of
overwhelming,
them,
you are
right?
overwhelmingly likely at 25 to be able to have a fully healthy pregnancy. You're not even considered high risk pregnancy until you're 35. I never advocated for women having
Yeah.
kids over 40. So now let me
Yeah,
finish
but
because I let you finish.
25
When
is
you
fine. What
have
about
kids,
30 though? Why do you recommend them
30
at
is fine
30?
too.
Yeah,
You're still, I
but
said
what would you
25 to
recommend?
35.
Would you recommend that they have it at 25 rather than 30?
I would say that that's not the biggest factor I would look at. I would look at where you are in your life at 25, right? So even though you may be increasing your list marginally, you didn't even tell me exactly how much, even though if I did that, you
Well,
would
it's
say I
it's a
never read it. And
statistical.
Wait,
blah, blah, blah.
Andrew, let her
It's a
finish now.
statistical significance.
She just said to let me finish. I'm saying that you should look at where you are in your life. And if you are at a place where you have your socio, like those things, if you are economically, if you are well, like financially better off, if you are stable, if you have education, if you have those things, or if you're still pursuing those things, you should wait till after those things are done, presuming that it's before like age 45 or 40 or whatever. I'd say like for most, like I can tell you the lawyer way to do it. You go through law school around you by 25, 26, you're done. You build your career for a few years. And then a lot of my friends, they start having kids
And
31,
let me
32.
respond.
I haven't had any of them have any issues. No, let me finish.
According,
and I would
well,
say that
listen,
therefore,
you filibuster. You won't go a point at a time. You just filibuster the
if
debate.
the only thing you're looking at, if you're only looking at the likelihood of having a birth problem, when the vast majority of women up to age 35 have kids perfectly fine, and those kids are going to have a much better outcomes, be much more, score way higher on their tests.
So
they're going to have higher socioeconomic
I need to know
status,
that it's
their outcomes are gonna be better,
significant.
you should
I
wait.
need to know that the outcomes are significant. That the
Okay, do
rating
you wanna
is.
share sources?
Hang on. That the rating. I just shared it. CDC.gov. You can look up this information. Also, peak fertility according to them. Okay, it's 22 through 25. That would be the peak fertility for females. Not only that, let's move into the fact that this, you making women wait because you supposedly want better outcomes, has led to a reproduction crisis inside of this nation where our birth rates are under replacement rates because we're not moving towards having children when we're younger, but rather looking for a materialist outcome. And the materialist outcome, according to you, is yes, we'll have less children, but we're going to hopefully give them a better quality of life. How's that conducive to your utilitarian worldview?
Real quick before Jasmine answers, this is a question I actually have for both of you because it's going to dictate where this goes. So did you guys want to argue from the woman's perspective or from a societal perspective or both?
Or you do both. It's fine.
I guess they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they can be different. Okay. If you guys want to do both, then feel free to answer the question.
Yeah, and I would say it's better for both. It's better to have children that are doing better. It's better to have children that are scoring higher in math, science. I have a whole thing. We can go through it. I can share my screen again. The relationship between maternal education and children's academic outcomes. You can look at a multitude of outcomes. It shows the same thing. So
yeah, can you get back to my argument
though?
though?
Be able to put women. Well, Andrew believes that you should be able to put women in breeding facilities. If our
yeah, and you just believe we should extinction the whole human race.
I'd let you finish. I'd let you finish. If you don't let me finish, I will stop letting you finish. I assure you. I'm saying that the only outcome we're looking at is breeding. If that was the goal, just how many children can you breed? Yeah, you should start at probably like 16, honestly, like they have in previous societies. And you should just breed as many children as possible. For women, if your goal is to have children that actually thrive, and for you to be in the best position to be the best mother to your child, be the most stable, and have the most likelihood of your relationship lasting with the child's father, you should wait till you are older. And I would say older as 25 and up.
Yeah, so there's big problems here with this, though. So the first one is I just told you what the peak fertility is in women and showed you the dangers that the longer you wait, the worse the outcome is in even having the child. And you also have a lot of women who, because their fertility decreases, have to turn to things like in vitro fertilization and other pathways to have children, which are remarkably expensive. Second, you have not addressed the fact that has led to a reproduction crisis. When you state that they used to have 16 children, that's true. But I mean, it's not necessarily 16, but the reason that they had so many is because the infant mortality rate was so high. If you go back from the 1800s, the year 1800 to the year 2020, you will find that the amount of children that women have had has done this. It's literally just nosedived right out the bottom, with the only exception of that being post-World War II during the baby boom, and that's because basically guys got back from the war and humped like rabbits, right? But other than that, there has not been any significant increase in the reproduction crisis of the West. Your advice actually leads to a worse societal outcome of the society itself not being able to reproduce itself, and you're negating the fact that the health and welfare of the child and the woman is put at a much higher risk the longer they wait.
No, the health of the child long term. So the risk is about 1 in 1,250. This is from Stanford Medicine Children's Health. 1 in 1,250 for a woman who conceives at age 25. So this idea that you need to be having kids at 18, otherwise your kids are going to be.
I didn't say 18.
You're going to have this high risk. 20 even. And if you're 25, you have less than 1.
What did I say the peak fertility years were?
Yeah, I let you finish. I'm trying to let you finish.
Well, don't straw man the argument. What's my?
But I'm trying to see.
I just want you to give my argument. That's it.
No, okay, fine. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this because I actually the last 2 times I'm like, let me try to let you finish, and maybe you'll extend the same to me, even though I think you were going totally off topic too. But if you just want to yell at each other, then let's just yell at each other. That can be the debate. I'm fine with that. My point is that. Yeah, well, I was trying. My point is that and you can't just look at one isolated factor. So while it may be true that in society, it might be the birth rates are declining and that we should have more kids, in our current society, telling people to pop out kids when they can't take care of them, when those kids are going to be poor, when those kids don't have a bright future, I don't think is a good idea. And that's the thing. If you want to, our society right now is built on people needing, for the most part, to actually graduate school, to be able to buy a home. Those kinds of things are important and over for you and your children to flourish. So for you to say fuck all that because our birth rates are declining, everyone pop out kids as soon as you can and have as many as possible isn't, I don't think, going to lead to better outcomes.
So poor people shouldn't have kids. That's the entailment.
I don't think poor people shouldn't have kids, but I do wish that poor people would have less kids than they are having.
Okay, so then they shouldn't have kids. Poor people shouldn't have kids.
I didn't say they shouldn't have kids, but we do have a problem right now with poor people.
Well, how can you hold
like me?
Wait. I'm gonna have to start taking a more aggressive role in moderation because it is.
Well, I just want to ask this one question: how can you take the contrary position to itself and say poor people shouldn't have less kids? I just wish that poor people would have less kids.
I wish that, but that doesn't mean they should do what I wish.
Yeah, but they should, because remember, your morals is all about your preferences. What do you mean?
Yes, I would say it's actually worse for society because those people are overrepresented in the amount of people who are seeking government assistance, food stamps, they're on welfare because they can't afford to take care of their kids. Now, while I can't tell poor people what they should and shouldn't do, I wish personally, as a person living in this society, although I still think their freedom to have kids and their autonomy outweighs my preferences, I think it's better if poor people or people who can't afford to take care of their kids would stop having them at that rate.
Well, poor doesn't entail that you're not going to take care of your kids. That's one. But two, what you've just outlined is a eugenics program.
It's not a eugenics program.
You're a eugenicist. You want them to not to.
And they do. Poor people that have a lot more kids do tend to ask the government for resources to take care of those kids at higher rates.
What do you wait? You don't think that the government should provide for poor people's children?
I didn't say that. But my advice to those people, or my preference, would be that people would think harder before having kids that they don't have the money to take care of.
So then your preference is that poor people no longer have children.
I never said that.
Well, then I don't understand how you can hold these two worldviews.
My preference is if you're not, yes, I will say this, because not all poor people are also seeking government assistance. So that's also something to consider. But if you're somebody who's having a kid or you're choosing to have a kid, now if it just happens, it's an accident, but if you're able to make a choice, because we're talking about choice here, right? And if you're able to take precautions or to wait or to use protection, if you're not able or ready to take care of that kid and you're going to rely on the government to take care of the kid, I would prefer if you didn't have the kid, but it's not my decision to make.
Yeah, so your preference, again, just to summarize, is that poor people did not have children.
My preference is that
to
people
have less children, not no children.
And I'm saying that if
Yeah,
you
but why
need
have
government
even
to take
one?
care
Why
of the
have
children,
why should poor people have even one child?
if they can't take care of it and they have the choice and they can take precautions to not have the kid and they can wait till they're older, maybe go to school instead of having the kid so that their kid is more likely to
Yeah,
be
but let's say
better
those
off,
options
and
aren't
also
available.
they don't need the government to take care
Yeah.
of the kid. I think that's good advice to give those people. Yes.
Yeah, so what is the metric that you would use then for when you're out of the poorhouse and actually, in Jazmen's worldview, capable of taking care of a child?
I would say one good way is when you don't need government assistance to do it.
So no people on government assistance should have children.
I would, yeah.
So congratulations, you have just eliminated most of the
I
black
would say
people
that
from the
you're-
United
the way
States,
you're
Jasmine.
phrasing it, the way you're phrasing it, I just said it's not my decision, but
Right.
my advice to those people and my preference is that if you are
Yeah.
too poor to take care of the child, then you can do things to prevent having a child,
Mm-hmm.
like using protection or choosing to wait until you're older. That is better not only for the child, for you, and for society. So yes, my preference is that people do what's better for all three, for the mother, for the child, for the father, and for society.
I want you to understand what you just said. What you just said to me when I asked you this question is, yeah. You said, yeah. My preference would be if they're on any sort of government or state assistance, yeah. My preference is that they don't have children. If we were to follow that to its entailed end, you would eliminate most African American families and most African American children, as they are the ones who are the most heavily dependent upon government assistance demographically to help support their families. Why would you do that? Why do you want to destroy black people, Jasmine? Why do you want to do that?
I don't want them to have kids. I would think it's better for them to have kids in better circumstances. So I think we should be pushing education in those places. We should be giving them better educational opportunities, giving them more resources so that they don't make those decisions, giving them better sex education, because those things are also heavily correlated with people having unwanted pregnancies. I want to prevent unwanted pregnancies.
Sure, you could say that. You could say that you want to extend
people from having kids before they're ready to have kids.
Yeah, so you can say that you want to extend all these things, right? I wish that we could get past it by offering X, Y, and Z. But in the current society, that is not the way that it is set up, right? They're not being offered X, Y, and Z. So in the current society, Jazmen's preference is that black people, for the most part, don't have children.
I don't think it's for the most part. I said that if you are not,
if they're on government assistance, right?
Are most black people on government assistance? Because that's what the logical conclusion of your thing. Because you just said, I said most black people shouldn't have children. I just said, and if you even want to go by your warped interpretation of what I said that if you need government assistance to take care of your child, so you're saying most black people? That's new to me. Most black people who have children are on government assistance? That's different than saying they're on government assistance at higher rates than white people, but that's not the same thing, Andrew.
So again, let's just assume for a second.
What do you mean again? Answer what I just said.
I'm going to. Let's assume for a second that it's only, I don't know, 20% or 15%, and that whites, let's just assume for white people it's only 5%. We'll just assume that for the sake of the hypothetical, right? It's higher than that, but let's just assume, okay? If that is true, then you would be, if we entailed your preference out to the rest of society, essentially be disproportionately telling one race over the other that they shouldn't have children, Jazmen.
That would be a disparate outcome of my advice, right?
Yeah.
Just like if I say, oh, this should be the limits, this should be the test you need to go in to get into the military, and it may disproportionately negatively impact women because women aren't able to achieve that as much as other people or men are able to achieve it. It has a unequal outcome, but the advice is facially neutral in the sense that it is better and it is, I think, good to prevent unwanted pregnancies and to have children when you are able to take care of them. Now, even though it's true that this affects Black people more than others, I think it would be good. I think it would be a good outcome for the Black community to stop having all these children when they're too young and they're not able to take care of them, when they don't have the sex education, the sexual education to know how to prevent these pregnancies, when they're on poverty, they're on welfare, they're on food stamps, because that's just perpetuating a cycle where those kids don't thrive. Their kids are more likely to be teen parents, and it's just doing this long cycle. Whereas if they said, okay, I'm actually going to wait. I'm going to wait till I'm like Michelle Obama and have 2 kids, and those kids are going to thrive. Now, I know she's an anomaly. Then I think that's better. Yes.
I have nothing else to say on the topic. I'll let it stand. Okay. I'll let it stand with that.
I'll let it stand with that too. We can go into closing statements, but yeah, I think that's totally a sound advice.
Okay.
And I'm okay with the audience taking that as it is.
Me too. Right. Me too.
That was a quick one. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We can jump into closing statements then. Let's go with since Andrew opened, let's go with Jazmen for closing.
Okay, so yeah, again, the premise of this was, should women have kids early or should they wait? And most available data, except for a slight between 25 and 35. Now, when I say older, I'm not saying when you're 50, okay? I'm saying probably peak ages 25 to 35. I am speaking against women having kids before age 25. And I would say that these women tend to do better on a variety of metrics. One of those is divorce. You get divorced way less if you're between 25 to 32 and even older than if you're 20. If you are able to get a college education, you should definitely do that because your likelihood of divorce goes down, and also the outcomes for your children go down, and they even go down after measuring for socioeconomic status, genetics, which I'm assuming means IQ, and family dynamics or family background. So even just education alone, your kids have much better cognitive skills. They're able to test. They score way higher on a number of metrics. They actually tend to live longer too. And it seems like pretty much on every outcome, they tend to do better if you have kids later in life. But even if you don't want to get educated, your outcomes are still better. And this thing's over, but there are stats that also show that children born to women over 25 also tend to do better even without an education. But those two things together increase your likelihood of your child having better outcomes. And if more people did that, I think it would lead to overall better outcomes for society than if we just had a bunch of kids in poverty on welfare, than if we all had kids young because we're trying to just go to peak breeding potential and have as many kids and just pop them out as much as possible. Yeah.
Real quick, I'm just going to throw a little statistics in case anyone was wondering. Medicaid in 2016, 43% of recipients were white, 18% were Black, and 30% were Hispanic. And then if we look at food stamps, which is 43 million recipients, 36.2% were white, 25.6% were Black, 17.2% were Hispanic. Okay, just a fun fact.
So anyway. I guess this means that my advice is disproportionately affecting white people, but okay.
Well, not according to you. According to you, the assumption that you had was that this my closing things. According to Jazmen, under her assumption that Black people are receiving a disproportionate rate of government assistance, and I'm going to quote her here as I was taking notes, I wish that they would. I wish that the people in this group would stop having children if they're poor. That's what she said verbatim. Those were her words. I made sure to mark those words. Now, she probably can't follow her own prattle, but she did actually say for verbatim that Black people inside of this group, because they're poor, should stop having children. That's what she said over and over and over again. She outlined basically a Jazmen Jafar eugenics program targeting minorities or anybody on government assistance of any kind. That's what her actual position is. That's the entailment of her position. And the thing is that let's just assume for a second that we were both wrong and that whites are actually disproportionately consuming the amount of government assistance per capita. Under the assumption that they were not, she was still willing to make the claim because she assumed that Blacks were, that they should stop having children, and essentially outlined a eugenics program for it, saying, I would tell all of them, because they're poor and on government assistance, stop having children. That's what she would say. Literally, that's what she said. I couldn't believe it. I was stunned by it, but not overarchingly surprised because the worldview is a self-centered, selfish, hedonistic worldview. And you can see what it amounts to, essentially, is just whatever I think inside of my kind of bizarre preferences, which when I take it to their logical conclusion, no poor people have children, especially not disproportionate minorities. None of this is really a progressive view, right? They're all like this. They don't give a shit, okay? They're a bunch of eugenicists, self-serving, hedonistic lunatics. And I hope I was able to demonstrate that really well during this debate, and I feel like I did.
Also, just to
Wow,
clarify
the comments for once are on my side.
wait, just to clarify something for the chat. So that was not per capita. That was just from
You're right. It's not per capita, but I was just granting if it was.
Okay. I just want to clarify that for the chat. Yeah, my whole position is I feel like dumb people should breed less. But anyway, that's an aside.
So
okay.
you're a hedonistic, eugenic,
yes,
racist.
he is. Well, he
I
is
am,
a
but,
hedonist.
well, I'm
yeah.
not racist, but I am definitely a hedonistic, mild eugenist in some ways. I'll fully own that. Okay, let's see if there's any good super chats. Okay. I don't want to read any super mean super chats. I appreciate you guys sending me the money, but I'm just not going to read that. And it seems like every single one of them is mean. So, okay. Appreciate the money, guys, but I'm not going to read mean super chats. Okay. Fun debate, I thought. Do you have any super chats on your end, Andrew?
I do, but I always do those off stream. So
okay.
I appreciate the time. And I don't hold grudges. My job is to represent my worldview the best way that I possibly can, and I appreciate my opponent coming out tonight and having this spirited debate with me. So I never take any of this personally, and I'll never take any of it personally. This is literally my job to represent my worldview the best way possible. And again, all thanks to Alex for hosting this debate. I appreciate it very much. PWF has been very gracious to the Crucible and will always be very gracious back.
For sure, man.
And yeah, I'd like to extend that back. I don't take any of this personally either. And I'm always happy with how these end up because I can go back to my job, which is being a porn star, which I have the freedom to do in this great country of America. So have a wonderful night, everyone.
Based. All right, cool, guys. Thanks for joining. It was fun. Hopefully you enjoyed this. And both of their links will be posted in the description probably in the next hour.
Boy. You can't always get them to just come out and admit it, but occasionally, you can get them to just come out and admit it. Occasionally. Let me dive in to all of the great super chats. I appreciate it very much. That was a ton of fun, and I hope that she replays that ending over and over and over and over. I hope she does. $10 comes in from Christopher A. I missed this super chat last night, so I wanted to get to it today. Good day, sir. Thanks for all you do. The epic wins. Been sharing the content with some coworkers at my day job. It's amazing how many people are secretly based, and we just need to initiate the conversation. Yeah, well, that's true. You just have to talk to them. You'll find out that way more people agree with the worldview that we espouse than don't. $10 comes in from New Thundercats Chant, who says, sheer cat, ho. Okay, that's pretty funny. I must admit, that's pretty funny. Let me move over to the YouTube chat. Appreciate all the great support to the channel, guys. How we can keep on bringing this fantastic content to you. But that was a real fucking doozy to end on. I actually couldn't believe she said it. She said the quiet part out loud. You know, they don't always do that. Sometimes you really got to beat it out of them, but she did. She said the quiet part out loud. That was amazingly fun to see because you really can't get them to do that most of the time. I also thought the studies thing was fucking hilarious. That was probably, well, not probably. That was one of the funnest times I have kind of deconstructing a worldview in a long time. Anyway, let's get into this. 20 gifted subs comes in from Marcane. Man, thank you very much. I appreciate it. $5 comes in from Siege D, who says, when you are, as well as Rachel, coming to the studio in Vegas for Rolo Sartain, Glenn Lawrence, Mr. Producer, like I said, I'm going to reach out again because I think that we should be able to kind of set that up probably on the eve of the whatever podcast, right? So I think we'll check that out. That would be fun to do. 8 gifted memberships comes in from Marcane again. Thank you so much for doing that. He donated like 100 memberships tonight. Sexton donated memberships. Tons of people got memberships tonight. I'm glad that you enjoy the content. Yeah, they sent in a ton of gifted memberships. Really appreciate that very much. Yeah, so even for those of you who might say, but I like the eugenicists and blah, 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 blah. From her worldview, that doesn't make any sense. From her worldview, she should not be endorsing that, right? She's a liberal, progressive, OnlyFans prostitute. That's the thing that's so funny about it. $7 comes in from Marcane, says, we need 1D to get a membership. Yeah, that would be fun. $2 comes in from CHD. Epic, we finally got the mics working. Well, the mics were never not working. I just muted myself on my end as they were setting up so that you guys don't hear what's going on in the behind the scenes. So, $5 comes in from Mentally Capable. Says, show no mercy, Andrew. I didn't show any. $20 comes in from Donovan Fletcher, who says, snagged your wife's book, saving it to read on a flight from AK to Cincy. So, what is that? Arkansas to Cincinnati for Christmas. Just so more people can see it. Salute to the good work from you and yours thus far. Thank you very much, Donovan. I appreciate that. Hope you enjoyed it very much. Marcane sends in $7 and says, damn it, I lost my spot. There we go. I'm going in again. 1D needs a membership. Did 1D ever get his membership? A lot of people wanted this guy 1D to get a membership. $20 comes in from Austin Detillo, who says, I'm out with family, so I have to catch this later, unfortunately. God bless. Well, I hope you can catch it later. And thank you for the $20. I appreciate it. FDG, he also gifted a whole lot of Crucible memberships tonight. Thank you very much for doing that, man. The members here really appreciate it, and we really appreciate it. He donated over 50 memberships himself. And then Marcane, of course, for the over 100 memberships. Jim Sexton sent in a whopping $500 super chat, taking us over the goal in the Dono Bar. And he said, let's push you over that back to whatever goal, which he did. And thank you, Jim Sexton. I appreciate it. AI Newkirk sends in $10 and says, someone should start an OnlyFans reading Bible verses, maybe wearing a bonnet and traditional pilgrim attire. $1.45 comes in from Benderman, who says, looking lovely, babe. Because Alex said you're looking lovely tonight, Andrew. I don't know what the fuck he was thinking. I think he was just funning, though, you know. $2 from Yukon Cornelius, who says, let's 20 away. Or let's go 20 away from the Dono goal. $5 comes in from the Smoking Patriot, says keeping the pack filled. Hey, I really appreciate that. Joshua Wooden says Article 7 in the year of our Lord. What do you think about the Andrew and Matt debate? I'd love to see Andrew debate Michael Jones. I don't know who that is. I don't know who Michael Jones is. But I don't really shy away from debates with anybody. Eventually, I can usually beat their actual positions out of them, given enough time. Usually. Andrew already wrecked her with his opening, says the unconventional man. $5 comes in from Jellybean. He says, great opening. It was a good opening. And just had her kind of concede to the equalization of worldviews. And then we could get into the outcomes, right? That was the goal. Wish we didn't have to kind of levy so much on studies, but for her, empirical data was what she really wanted to bake on to kind of say that her outcomes for society were better, and she couldn't even fucking read them. She literally couldn't even read her own data. She has no idea what she was talking about. $5 comes in from Joshua Wooden, says, did I mishear the young lady? I thought she learned about America and love it more. God of the Bible is nothing like Sharia law. That's true. $13 comes in from Mark Kane. He says, but. Joshua Wooden for $10 says, Jazmen, there is 2,000 years of Christianity helping the world like nothing ever seen on earth, and Islam has been terrible for 1,400 years. I assume you see how much suffering is in the 47 Islamic nations. Of course, we couldn't get into that either, but I would have made an argument towards that as well. Appreciate the $10, Joshua, very much. Wicked Wally for $5 says, attention, all women. It isn't hard to not follow your statement with, and yeah, when your statement is over, just shut the fuck up, the men. $2 from James Sharp, who says, she's not here for solutions, she just wants her way. That's absolutely true. And she basically admitted that. Joshua Wooden says she loves the foundation of America. Someone tell her the foundation of this great nation was God. You can't convince these people of that. $5 from Hossbar says, pretty tired of Alex. He's mostly fine, but the dude can't fucking moderate and steps in to clear things up, except he just complicates it more. Well, I'm not going to beat up on Alex too much. He's learning to moderate as he goes, and he is getting better each time he does it. And I've always been thankful to his channel for setting up these debates, so I'm not going to bash on his channel at all. $5 comes in from Joshua Wooden. Not true, Jasmine. This subjective thing in the West is why no one knows truth anymore, so the logic is everyone is subjective, so it's a tie. Right. So that means my worldview for whatever it is that I want to see in society is just as valid as hers, but she never really understood that. She's just like, no, but I'll oppose it based on my preference. And it's like, okay, well, I'll oppose that preference based on my preference, and they're both just as valid. Right. Yeah, that's true. And so it's like, okay, but then she goes, but I have force. It's like, well, then as long as I take force, then we're still in the same playing field, right? It's just kind of endlessly like, what the fuck? $2 from the unconventional man. Over 1,000 people here. Get the likes up. Was there 1,000 people in chat? Happy to see all of you. Joshua Wooden says, does Andrew always debate leftists? The hookup culture is legal, but selling yourself as prostitution. I wonder why she is for this. So she's not free? Well, from her purview, remember, she says that she thinks a right is actually, that it's like an inalienable right to be a prostitute, right? That's actually a right that she believes in, which is insane. And you could get into these more if the problem is like when I try to just say, look, stay on topic and just answer a couple of these quick questions, that actually would be helpful if she would do, because then we wouldn't have wasted as much time in the intro me beating out of her that she's a utilitarian. But now we know that too, right? So we got to like beat the positions out one at a time. It's annoying. When she names herself Jazmen Jafar but squawks like she's the parrot. $2 from Spartan Up North says, exposed as an abstract only hoe. Dude, abstract only fans. Oh, it's so good. $2 from Virginia Lou says, he's moving the goalpost. I don't know who she's talking about. I felt like I was on topic the entire time. The unconventional man says, in her original country, she would have been stoned. Right. It's true. Joshua Wooden for $5 says, point out this violence was more in Islamic lands. Tell us, Jasmine, how many Christians or Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses are high violent areas? Yeah, actually, I was trying to get into that as well, but we got bogged down in her not being able to make any sense of her data. Marcane for $12.74 says, whenever leftists go into this weird babysitting, over-explaining, useless shit talk mode, I can't stop but cringe. Nobody can. Nobody can. $2 from Colin Rack says, you triggered a perpetual prattle machine. $5 from Wicked Wally. Since when has Jasmine ever had a problem with letting a man finish? Oh. That's so brutal. When has Jazmen ever had a problem with letting a man finish? That's fucking brutal. $10 from Rich Wright, who says her argument is moot. Since the average relationship, generally speaking, is 7 years regardless of age, women's old age doesn't guarantee good outcomes for children. Well, it doesn't, but I thought that there was an easier way to attack that just by showing kind of the necessity of her saying, no, the outcomes, all I care about is the outcomes for children. And so the advice that I would give is that the poor don't have children. And it's like, well, you realize who that's going to disproportionately affect the most, right? And then that's panic mode for these people. That's panic mode. Kingdom in Context sends in $100 and says, good debate, brother. Seems she didn't realize that the scientists, international thought leaders, and smart people are religious, as they've openly talked about bringing into culture the ideals of Luciferianism, as stated by Alice Bailey in the UN in the 1930s. That might be something worth doing a follow-up on. Appreciate the big $100 super chat, Matt Matters. Means a lot. Thank you guys for all the support to the channel. We still have some super chats here to go. $20 comes in from Registone. It says, another eugenicist exposed. Democracy has been saved. We can only have it if we do the most immoral, heinous things ever, after all, right? $5 super chat says, laughing my ass off, you killed me when you said, why did you want to destroy black people, though? That was pretty funny. $5 from Mentally Capable says, how can you pull up a study without knowing how to navigate the study? Because she didn't read them. She never read them. She didn't read the paper. She kind of glanced at it a bit. She didn't read the sources. She didn't understand anything about sociology, the replication crisis, how people have sent in false studies for replication or not for replication, but for peer review. They've been peer reviewed and published in academic journals, even though they were fraudulent from the gate, just in order to demonstrate how bad that process is, which is why I kind of often will point out what every leftist will often point out, which is, well, wait a second, where's the meta-analysis for the data? You don't have that? Why are we looking at this data without you giving me kind of a grouping of what these different terms mean? Why aren't you doing any of that? You know what I mean? And that's important. That's important. She skimmed it and got broiled. Yeah, that was bad. That was bad. They were both looking through it as quick as they could, too. I was just kind of patiently like, I'll just let it go. $2 from Drew the Dogman says she wants to eliminate the useless eaters. I don't know. $5 from Blind Guy Tries says, I know you like Alex, but his moderation was ridiculously one-sided tonight. I think that Alex is trying to make sure that the opposition doesn't beat up on his channel either. And for the most part, he just kind of let it go. You know what I mean? Is it totally different than the way that I moderate? Yes, but you know, if you're going to go on other people's channels, you're going to be kind of have to adhere to their rules. And one thing Alex does, he sets up great debates. Okay. To be fair to Alex, he didn't know the study. Yeah, that is fair. That is fair. Kingdom in Context, I really do appreciate that $100 super chat. Again, James Sexton for $500. That was great. You know, $5 comes in from M Juxtapose 3. Andrew, you single-handedly brought me closest to believing in God. This is no joke. Life has been killing me lately. Thank you and Godspeed. Well, I want to let you guys know I've gotten a lot of messages like that from a lot of people. Ultimately, sorry, Matt Matters. You know what? I didn't give proper credit here. I'm sorry. Kingdom in Context sent in $100. Matt Matters also sent in $100. And he said, my appreciation for the historic dismantling of Dillahunty and the worldview he espouses. 8 minutes. We did it in 8 minutes, guys. And Matt Matters, thank you so much for that huge super chat. It was very kind of you to send in, and that's what keeps the lights on here at the Crucible. We're still going to be fundraising for the rest of the week for the trip. Having additional money never hurt anybody when you're traveling cross country, so thank you very much. It was awful kind of you. Anyway, I was saying I do get a lot of these kind of like, Andrew, you help bring me closer to God, things like that. I get a lot of actual flack from different Christians on the internet because they kind of follow this be nice doctrine, the be nice doctrine, and they won't really. Unfortunately, I wish you would have gotten the points to a layman. Unless you debate a lot, you might think she actually. I don't think so. I don't think anybody would ever objectively say she won that debate unless they're insane. She just talked and filibustered a bunch. But when her points had to meet the road, they didn't do very well. But anyway, I've gotten that a bunch. I have gotten that a bunch, and I appreciate that. Just remember, I'm not a Christian apologist, okay? And I don't claim to be. Christianity is definitely the worldview that I utilize as a prism for political debating. But I do think that we do need to have more Christians doing political debate, okay? We need to do more political debate. Not just apologetics, but getting into politics. You know what I mean? That would be an excellent thing to see more people do. $20 comes in from Irish Saint 89, who says, my wife was yapping the whole time I was trying to listen. After I get done locking her and the dog up, after I get done locking her and the dog up, I'll re-listen from the beginning. Any new debates coming up? I've seen upcoming Cosmic Skeptic versus Shapiro on God debate. Really? Cosmic, you mean versus Zen Shapiro? I didn't know that was coming up. But he also books debates. I don't always have knowledge of them. $20 from Iron Frame says, Jafar and Rollo conceded to her divorce rate point with women aged 20-25. Total lie. 110 is the timestamp on that. Fresh and Fit episode to see. Myron and Rollo both checked her on it immediately. Makes sense. I didn't let her get away with it either. You know, but the problem is that one of the things when people bring up data that they don't even understand and they haven't read it, they haven't done any of that. When you ask them just for like basic points of clarification on the data, they always spurg out like that every single time. You're trying to argue with the data. You're trying to argue. No, I'm not trying to argue with that. I'm just asking for clarification so that we can get our terms correct. No. You know, $4 from Emerald says, great debate. Thanks for calling out the study. The paper isn't empirical or meta-analytical. It was a broad lit review. She didn't know what she was citing. I completely agree. She had no idea what the fuck she was citing, which is why it's easy for me to just kind of dismiss it, let her go around in circles. Matt Matters, again, for your $100 donation. I really appreciate it. $5 super chat from Joshua Wooden. If she is an actual lawyer, then we should all pray that we don't get her to defend us in a court of law. I think that's what James Sexton would say as well. I think that's what Jay Sexton would say. By the way, $50 donation comes in on the PayPal side. Let me just see who it's from. I don't want to name the name because I think some people actually use their real names when they donate, which is fine, and I'm never going to reveal that information. I'm just letting you know there was a $50 donation, and KS, I see that, and thank you so much for the big dono. Thanks for the big dono. I appreciate it very much. That's the end of the super chats on this side. Let me just recheck the dono chat, make sure I didn't miss anything on that side. And I did, of course. $20 comes in from Chaos Law, who says, the insistence on meta-analysis was specifically because of the dubious sociological claims. Correct. That's correct. Sociological claims are very dubious because of their failure to be replicated. Justified why her hasty generalizations that this means you require such a standard for all claims is grounded to have her disbarred even if she passed it. That doesn't surprise me, actually. But yeah, that was a ton of fun. Like, I had a lot of fun during that debate. You know what I mean? Always a ton of fun. $5 from the Unconventional Man says Christians need to stop the God real though debates and just focus on morality. I agree that once we can kind of move it to, okay, well, if both of our worldviews are equal, then let's start talking about how it applies to society. Then we end up with crazy shit like that, where they're like, let's get rid of all the black people. You know what I mean? That's what you end up with, is that kind of shit. M Juxtapose 3 for $5 says, Andrew, advice for men who are looking to get into Christian orthodoxy. Where to start? How does it differ from other denominations? So I would start with this. I would go into the Orthodox Discord. Mr. E, if you're listening, make sure that you post up a reciprocal link inside of our Discord that we can direct people to. Talk to my good friend there, Chase Haggard, who's one of the head moderators there and an absolutely brilliant apologist. And that's how I would start, by getting your answers or getting your questions answered. Marcane for 50 Australian dollars says, come to Australia. Interestingly enough, I have some possible IRL stuff that has been requested that I do in Australia on a large podcast. So we might end up having that wish come true. And because there's so many different Australians who support the channel in such a huge way, I would love to have some kind of get-together with all of them, if it's possible. I don't know the geography of Australia very well, so I don't know what the geographical differences would be, but I'm sure at least a few of the Australian fans of the Crucible would probably like to show up and have a couple of drinks with me. So Alex for $10 says, most will not have college degrees or even a $70,000 salary by 30 or ever, so she's proposing for most women to never have children or high risk for nothing. Human flourishing is not necessarily money. It's just crazy to me. It's just crazy to me. You know? I'm in Australia, but I doubt you'll be coming to my city. Yeah, probably not. Again, I'm not that familiar with Australian geography, but I thought you were an Australian truther. That's funny. I like to make fun of that because it's hilarious. You know what I mean? And the Australians know it's hilarious, which is why we make fun of it. You know what I mean? I've been in mock debates in the Discord going back and forth about it. It's hilarious. It's just funny. Anyway, what other questions do you guys have for me? Going to give it about 20, 25 minutes for Q&A, and then I'm going to move the chat over. Hopefully we can find somebody who's streaming who's awesome. And I would like to take in suggestions for streamers I should move the chat over to when I'm done. Her real argument was just marry a rich man. Yeah, it's crazy. The chat has declared her name is now Titler. So funny. Marcane for 50 Australian dollars says, bring a towel. Water, shirts, singlet, and water if you're coming to Australia. Why do I need to bring water, ma'am? Is the water bad in Australia? Is it bad water? Bring a towel, water, shirts, a singlet, and water. He mentioned water twice, so water must be super important in Australia. Yeah, Titler, that's funny, dude. That's fucking hilarious. That'll probably never get old. Not sure that won't follow her forever. Yeah, Titler, that's hilarious. All right. What else you guys got? What other questions you might have? Any updates on Rob Noor joining the invasion? Unfortunately, I've been very busy kind of prepping for these other things, and I have not been able to reach out and talk with Rob Noor about getting him set up, but he does want to join the invasion for sure. $20 from Joshua Wooden says, I watch a lot of debates, and you're becoming one of my favorites. I learned most from David Wood and Wise Disciple. He does debate teacher reaction videos. As a Vadi Bachman, it says the 11th commandment, thou shalt be nice. No, thou shalt not be nice. Red Bar Radio, I've actually talked with Red Bar, but we have to be cautious in associations. I'm not saying anything bad about anybody. I'm just saying you have to be cautious about associations in this industry, unfortunately. Andrew, you've been on fire. You might as well take an international victory lap. Well, I've been doing, a part of why Zen's been taking care of the streams, and then Jim Bob, of course, and guys like this, is because part of what I'm doing is, kind of a media blitz, right? We got the Crucible, and many of you are getting this shirt. It's a pretty awesome shirt, or I wouldn't wear the fucking thing. But yeah, it's been, there has been a bit of, a lot of kind of moving myself over to um, publicizing the channel, and that's been good for the channel. So it's a lot of work, but that's part of being a content creator, is you also have to do promotion. So I missed a super chat from Column Rack. Oh, well, that's not good. What did it say? Maybe somebody can DM it to me real quick. It is a nice shirt. It is a nice shirt, and I do give a few of them away. It's actually really comfortable. So one of the reasons I said before I send out any type of swag to anybody, I want to test it myself, right? I want to test all that shit. So I want to wear it. I want to make sure that it's good, all of that. So another huge 50 Australian dollars comes in from Marcane, who says you should probably tackle the more popular Christian YouTube channels like What Do You Meme and David Wood to show fellow Christians the truth. Tackle it in which way? I'm not sure. I wouldn't mind having a conversation with them and kind of explain, but I think it's also hilarious that many of them kind of follow the Be Nice doctrine. It hasn't got them very far. The secularists are hyper predatory when it comes to that, as purviewed by Matt Dillahunty. And when you give them a taste of their own medicine, it doesn't seem to work out very well for them. And I wish, but David Wood said that. He did say, like, look, not everybody in this arena is going to be nice and kind, and just kind of secularists aren't used to that. They're just not used to it. They're not used to not having a Christian sitting there kissing their ass. And that's bad. You guys shouldn't do that. Like, that's all kinds of bad. You should at least match their energy, Should at least match their energy. Dude went from being an actual psychopathic attempted murderer to a chill Christian apologist. God is mighty to save. I don't know. I don't know who that is. Who you're talking about? The Be Nicest guard. Yeah, I don't care for it. Way to go, Crumble. That's funny. Titler's idea of winning a debate is to repeat things shrilly again and again. Yeah, that was kind of my plan, was when she tried to steamroll to just kind of do the re. And once you do the re, they kind of settle the fuck down because oh shit, I am reading right now. Oh, they're very secularist and don't believe in Christian nationalism. You know what? That's actually a really good point, Marcane, because when I was watching that analysis by Wood, he did seem to have kind of some more progressive values when it came to, how he wanted society run. So that is actually a good point. I would not mind having that conversation with David Wood on that. Irish Saint 89 for $20 says, I met Ben Shapiro from the Daily Wire and Cosmic Skeptic is Alex O'Connor, who I mentioned you debate. Okay. What was the main reason you didn't relate with Catholicism in NJ other than my Ukrainian friends? It's a smaller religion. So this might sound very odd to you, Irish Saint, but I came to Orthodoxy logically first. I came to it logically first, and the faith came later. I was actually very resistant to it. But over time, as part of my inquiry, I had every single question answered in a way that made sense and had kind of a logical foundation that I could not refute. And then from there, it was really too easy to embrace. Whereas many things with Catholicism, I was less eager to embrace from a logical perspective, like the fact that, if you're divorced and it's granted by the church, it's not really a divorce, it's an annulment, and we just pretend that the marriage never happened, right? Just never happened. Things like that. There's a bunch of little things like that that really did not care for that. You know what I mean? I could not get my mind wrapped into those kinds of things. They didn't make much sense to me. Same here, Andrew. Yeah, a lot of people have. It's funny when I mention that, it almost sounds counterintuitive, right? What do you mean you came to your faith logically? It's like, well, I know how that sounds, but the more I talk about that, the more I hear people going, me too. I did too, Interesting. That sounds like where I am at. Logically, it's on point, I find. Right. Same thing, Chief. Like it's a really good worldview to adopt. And once you realize that, and you kind of realize where your preconceptions for any of this truth even comes from, it just becomes kind of like, how the hell did I not know this before? You know what I mean? Chance we can see you and Jay Dyer debate tag together against some degens. That would be interesting, but I'm not sure that we would complement each other's style that well. I'm not sure. I enjoy doing shows with Jay, but mostly just kind of BS shows, right? Where we're BSing back and forth, or we're covering something which is kind of hard hitting. But I'm not adverse to it necessarily. I just think that he's the master of the transcendental argument. My preference is to just kind of have them say, okay, we're even Steven in our worldviews. Now, why, if you propose this thing, which I hate, you actually have as much justification for it as I do. She doesn't think that loses you the debate, but it really does. While you're not maybe saying that my worldview is superior to your own, you're at least granting that it's on par with your own. So who cares at that point? What's your objection to it? And then it becomes, well, my objection is outcomes. And then it's like, well, then really you don't believe that my worldview is on par with yours because it leads to worse outcomes. So let's get into the outcomes. But, you literally have to walk people through that. Logic can get you almost there, but at some point you have to jump ship and swim to shore. Yeah, it's true. Look, it's not, you can't only take it from a logical worldview. I'm just saying from my perspective, I came to it logically first. My wife said, you need to check this out. And I told her, yeah, fucking right. I don't give a shit about any of that. I don't believe in, all that idol worshiping nonsense, right? From my Protestant roots. And she was like, well, whether you do or you don't, would you at least take a look at it? And I said, fine, I'll take a look at it. And boy, am I ever glad that I did. Boy, am I ever glad that I did. And I had tons of objections. I must have sat down with Chase Haggard and Father Deacon Ananias 50 different times with my objections, which then led and turned into a debate. And they did not shy away from it one bit. They couldn't wait to dive into all of the reasons I was being stupid. And they were right. Joshua Wooden for $5 says, do you know David Wood's story? He's a diagnosed psychopath and he goes hard at Islam. I did not know that. I didn't know that you could be diagnosed as a psychopath because I think that psychopathy is not even in the DSM. I don't think that there is actually a clinical diagnosis for psychopathy. I think that the diagnosis is like borderline personality disorder or something like this. So, Jay Dyer's more the hard theist academic view. Your unique skill set is being able to defend Christian ethics within that secular bloodsport world. I agree. We both have a different part to play. I think that his part to play and the great Christian apologists on the internet play their part well. I just think that I have a different part. I have a different part in this thing. And I think that I play my part well too, but I'm not taking away from them. I built a lot of my arguments on the backs of giants. It's just that I want to try to be more relatable in some ways to the average viewer who's watching, as I'm going into these kind of mass degen audiences and trying to convince them away from some of the most horrific shit on planet Earth, right? That's actually very difficult to do. Marcane sends in he sent in a ton of money tonight, man. Crowns in chat for Marcane. Holy shit. It's awesome. He sends in $100 Australian dollars, says 19-year-old fan of the show. Made a nice amount of money, so I'm very happy to throw a few dollars towards my favorite show on the internet. Love all the Crucible staff and can't wait till you go mainstream. Well, you have to be careful about going mainstream too, because if you go too mainstream, then I'll end up having taken the Faustian deal, and I don't want to take the Faustian deal. I don't want to bargain against my ethics for fame or for fortune. So you guys might not know this, but I've had some pretty incredible job offers from people who want me to host different shows, and they have been very lucrative, and I've turned them down. And sometimes even my team's like, you're fucking crazy. Why would you turn that down? And I'm like, well, because I'm afraid that they actually won't let me talk about the things that I think are important. And instead, they're going to kind of move me over to talking about things that could even be contrary to my worldview. But I have to do it for money, right? And I think I don't ever want to do that. That's not, I'm just never going to do it. I'm never going to do that. So Marcane, I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much. I'm glad to have younger viewers watching the Crucible as well. Can I talk about sunscreen? What are you talking about? I know what you're talking about. Plus, you'll have an even bigger target on your back. Well, I don't know, man. It's pretty big now, to be honest with you. Yeah, money or your soul. Yeah, fuck that. I'm not doing that. I'm just not going to do it. Like, period. You know what I mean? I'm just not going to do it. So you have to be very cautious when you look at this, you know. You can get this offer for, you know, oh, we'll pay you $750,000 a year and blah, 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 blah. But I know where that leads, man. I know where that leads, especially if it's for a larger network when they tell you, here's all the things you can't talk about, though. And it's like, I don't think so, you know. $4 comes in from Java Crow, says, hey, Andrew, just now tuning in. How much of a BTFO was it? Will she be returning for round 3? For some reason, I think she'll probably come back for a round 3. For some reason, I think she will. As crazy as that sounds, I think that she will. I think she will. Though the waffling on it was insane. Yeah, just do your own thing, man. And if you get famous from it, from your own platform, that's a bonus. I kind of tend to agree with that, LRN. I kind of tend to agree with that. I mean, we've done great, and we've built a huge audience, and it's going to continue to get bigger as the Crucible continues to provide really great content, which we do, not just with debates, but with all sorts of different things. I think we'll do well across all platforms. So, you know, I'm not. I kind of like that advice, to be honest with you. So, she probably got new subs from the PWF chest. She might have. It's the Blaze, isn't it? I'm not saying, man. I'm not saying. I'm not going to say. There's been multiple people who've approached me. Some who you even know, like easily would recognize, and I've turned it all down. Joshua Wooden for $5 says she started reeking back at you. It was very awkward. You can tell by people's body language, and I've been studying theology for a year now. You are question? You are question marks. I don't know what the end of that means. She was reeking back at you. It was very awkward. You can tell by the body language, and I have been studying. Oh, okay. So this is, and I've been studying theology for a year now. You are question mark. I don't know what that means, Joshua. Sorry, man. Woodfloor Alchemist for $5 says, what's your post itinerary or itinerant on circumcision? My wife and myself are having a conversation about bodily autonomy and curious about your position. So I'm going to be completely honest about this. I want to give you a really good in-depth analysis, but I'm still arguing with it. I'm still arguing about it. I've been arguing about it with Zen. I've been arguing about it kind of with my wife. My mind's not completely made up on it yet. It's not completely made up on it yet. So I wish I could give you a better answer than that, but I just kind of want to be honest with you and say, with no bullshit, my mind's not made up. And when it is, I'll let you know. But it's not completely made up. I can see the arguments on both sides for it. So, now is it cope? Because much like most of the population of the United States, I'm circumcised. Maybe it's cope. It could be. It could just be I'm coping. It could literally just be that I'm coping. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just cope. You know, like, but rather than take a position right now until I work it through in my mind, I would basically just be telling you that I have a cognitive dissonance on the topic, which I do. But, you know, right now, probably I'm suffering from a bit of cognitive dissonance on that particular topic. Because kind of my gut's like, no, right? Like, that's my gut instinct to be like, no. But then there's some other entailments there where I'm like, well, maybe. You know what I mean? So I just kind of want to work it out in my mind before I give a good position on it. So I would say golden rings of cope for me in chat. I would say I'm coping a bit, maybe. Maybe a bit of cope, you know. Maybe a bit of cope on my behalf. You know, the other thing is, like, I'm going to be honest about this. I was talking to a friend of mine about this, kind Because it came up like half a year ago, and I was like, huh. It's kind of... And when I was talking with him, he was like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? I've never even thought about that. And the truth is I hadn't either. I'd never even thought about it. There's, you know those things you just kind of take as a given, and you just never think about them? That's one of those things. It just had never even come up before. I've never, ever been having a conversation in my life outside of kind of like the debate sphere and the debate ethics and things like this where that's even come up once. Like I've never been hanging out with a buddy and he's been like, oh man, I really wish my parents hadn't circumcised. Like it just never happened. So I never really thought about it very much, honestly. Wood Floor Alchemist for $2 says, watch American Circumcision documentary. I'll check that out. Yeah. I'm getting lots of cope in the chat for that. Yep. Okay. Lay it on me, fuckers. I get it. It's a bit of cope. I'm coping a little bit. I'm coping a little bit. I admit it. There's a bit of cope when it comes to that question. Okay. Fair enough. So, but I mean, honestly, when you guys think about it, has that ever even come up for any of you? Now I'm kind of curious. Have you ever been like having a conversation with a friend of yours and it's just never come up? Survivor bias? Could be. Could be. We're all coping, to be honest. Could be. We're all. I never thought about it really until it came up, inside the sphere. So, but it is a good question. It deserves an answer, but I'm just not ready to produce one just yet. My foreskin still haunts me to this day. I wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes to the smell of ghostly smegma. Oh God, dude. Talk about a troll comment. Ugh. But thanks for the visual, dude. Oh, gross. So gross. Alan Wigg sends in 10 pounds, says, due to the nature of tonight's debate, Andrew, it makes me curious to ask what kind of situation, money, lifestyle you and Rachel had when you had your first kid. We were dirt fucking poor. I didn't even know how I was going to make it to work because I could barely afford the gasoline to do so. We were living in Obama's economy. It was awful. It was an awful fucking economy, It really was. It was bad. And people don't remember really how bad it was, but it was bad. And I was dirt poor. Dirt poor. I mean, most of our early relationship, both of us were dirt poor. Barely making it, day to day. So, interestingly enough, I think people who have children tend to fight really hard to make sure that the circumstances improve for everybody. So, oh shit, you're Rachel's husband? Yeah, Rachel's my wife, man. You didn't know that? You didn't know that? How'd you not know that? Makes you a better man to have to fight your way up? Maybe a bit. Oh, yeah, dude. The '08, bro, yeah, that was so bad. Some of that shit was so bad, and people just kind of memory hole it, They memory hole the $7 gasoline. They just memory hole all that shit. Memory hole it all. We used to be dirt poor too. Now good. Yeah. I mean, it takes a while, but you can work yourself up to success. It happens. Yeah, she's my wife. How'd you not know that she was my wife? What do you mean? Our family success rate's only gone up since having kids? Yeah, well, once you have other people you have to take care of, it does not surprise me a bit. Joshua Wooden sends in $20, says, meek and mild has allowed the West to become the garbage dump we see. Secular humanism, atheism is a terrible foundation. Do you know T-Jump? He needs to be humbled by a Christian like yourself. What kind of Christian are you? I'll tell you a funny story about T-Jump, right? So when the Crucible first started, I was reaching out to have different debaters on. I did have T-Jump on twice, against Zen Shapiro and against Synth. You can find both those debates on Rumble, okay? So he's been on the Crucible multiple times. Now, What's really interesting about it is that when I reached out to him originally to come on for a debate, he said, well, it's $50. $50 for me to come on for a debate. And I was like, well, we just really kind of started the channel and I don't really have the $50 to pay you to come on. And he was like, well, it's $50. And I was like, well, any chance you can just kind of do it pro bono for a channel just starting out, And he was like, no, basically. Well, then a week later, he was like, he said, yeah, I'll do the debate. And I was like, oh, well, awesome. So we had him on and we did the debate and then we did the second one and he rage quit on the one against Zen, which was interesting. But what's so funny about the story is it was a couple of months later and I get reached out to by T-Jump's like booker, by his booker. And he's like, hey, T-Jump really like to have you on his channel. And I was like, yeah, no problem, $50. I never charge anybody anything for that, right? But I thought it was funny. I was like, yeah, $50. Joshua Wooden sends in $2, says, where can I find these shirts you speak of? You can find them at crucible.store. Moz, if you wouldn't mind putting the link in, that'd be great. But yeah, I just couldn't help myself, Couldn't help myself. I was like, yeah, sure, $50. And he was like, are you serious? It's like, yeah, man's got to make a living, right? $4 comes in from Java Crow, who says, on the FQ, foreskin question, I don't have an issue with not having it. I have an issue with who does have it. I remember hearing that celebs would use, oh, man. Do you want, yeah, okay, I get it. You're talking about, like, the stem cell stuff. Again, I think that there's some compelling arguments against. Okay, I'm just not ready to make a claim on it just yet. Being a Christian, what's your views on evolution? I reject evolution as a model, and I always have. I've always rejected it as a model. So I hope that answers that question. I understand that there's some people who don't reject the model who probably think, oh, I just can't believe that you're insane. Well, I said it. I reject the model. But I don't really get into evolutionary debates very often. Don't really need to. There are Christian debaters on the channel who they love that shit, and I leave it up to them. So, what else? Anything else you guys got before we wrap the show up? Now's your chance to get your questions in. Puke in my mouth. Ugh. Adaptation as well, or origin of species? Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, it depends on, I guess, how you would frame what adaptation is. So, I've seen kind of that argument utilized as well. You know what I mean? I think that kind of argument's used, it depends on what you mean by it. We'd have to frame it that way. You have to be cautious because you could kind of step into a landmine there. But yeah, I would talk with Jim Bob or Posh. They both really dive into the evolution. I kind of try to stick a little bit more on the political arena. That's where most of my content is focused. So up 3,000 subscribers for the month. Wow. Killing it this month. Thank you guys so much. What got you into debating and how'd you get so good at it? I got into it by complete accident, Brother Sid. There's a whole story to it. I can kind of give a link to a video for newcomers who are joining the channel who want to know kind of the backstory. But I started another debate channel with another outfit, and things didn't work out. So then I went and started my own. But we all got into it by accident. All of us got into it by accident. We were just kind of... I was just going on to Facebook and crushing liberals on this little stupid show, and it just started growing. So I don't have any formal debate training whatsoever, nor philosophy training whatsoever, none. I just kind of learned all that shit. So, but I mean, I do enjoy it quite a bit. And I think that there are people who use intuitive logic who are quite good at it, regardless of whatever their formal training is. So, 1 second here, guys. I'm going to send you away to another channel, assuming I can find one that's good to send you to. Let's find out. Who's on? Oh man, Modern Day Debate's on. Kind of don't want to send you there though. Somebody give me a channel suggestion. Somebody give me a channel suggestion. Andrew used to be a keyboard warrior. Yeah. Going on Fresh and Fit. Yeah, if they reach out, some people have talked to them on my behalf, so hopefully they reach out and we can get that done. Whose channel are we going to? Somebody give me a suggestion. I'm sending it somewhere, but where? Where's the question? Where are we going? Don't want to send you to... I guess I could send you to Stardust Stream. She's not that bad for a lib. You're going to go to Stardust Stream unless, unless you guys have, like, an alternative. You know? Anybody got an alternative anywhere? Yeah, not Tom. Okay, I'm not going to send it. Okay, I got enough negative feedback on sending people to Orthodox Ethos. What's that? Orthodox Ethos. Is that a good channel? Let me take a look at the channel real quick. See what the hell they're covering here. Oh, yeah. Well, that looks interesting. Yeah, Father Peter Hears is on there. All right. I'll send you guys over that way, except I can't. Damn it. I can't do it. His channel's not set up to allow that to happen. Yeah. Hang on. So that sucks. What else? What else we got? Razor Fist? Who's Razor Fist? Let's see who that is. Bob Ross. Nah, on Razor Fist. Okay. Who else? American Anchor Baby. He's a bass metalhead. You'll like him. Well, I don't even see him on. Is it Razor Fist Arcade? Is that the channel, Razor Fist Arcade? Is that what the channel is? Oh, Rageaholic. Okay. Yeah. Hang on. That's the dude who wears the sunglasses and shit, right? Yeah. Well, is he live? Sam Shimon? Who's Sam Shimon? That name sounds familiar. Yeah, is Rageaholic live is the question. I can't send you over there if he's not live. Can I watch T-Jump Rage Quit? I pointed out him saying religious people are quacks in a synonym for lunatics, people who cried about how you talked. He is live? Razor Fist is live. What's his channel called? Okay, he's live. What's his channel called? Can somebody put it in chat? Or go to my channel for the T-Dump Rage Quit. Yeah. Zen has it on his channel. Let's see. Is that it? He's playing Ninja Turtles? That's him? For real? Okay, Razor Fist Arcade is what you want. Okay, gotcha. Okay. I did see that. Nope, can't send you over there either. He doesn't have it set up for raids. So I guess all that I have left is Stardust, right? I guess you guys are going to Stardust channel. Yes, I did this to you. I did. I sent you to Stardust. Ugh, God help you all, but I'm doing that. Right? Whatever. Maybe they'll send some libs over this way at some point, right? Maybe they'll send some libs over this way and we can make them based. I don't know. From all of us here at the Crucible,